Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good afternoon to you. Thank you very much indeed to the legend that is Ian Collins. Back tomorrow from 1, but Talk Drive is on. Hope your Tuesday's gone well. I've had a bizarre one. If you'd like to be part... Well, listen, I have to tell you, Ryan, producer of the Jeremy Kyle Show, is not here today. Ryan said yesterday, and I quote, "I won't be in tomorrow. It's my wife's birthday, so I'm going for a massage." I said, "Would it not be better to give her a massage?" He went, "No, we're going for a joint massage." So, she assumes the position. I bet she's had that said a few times. Jodie is in charge today. On the phones, the wonderful Mia, 0344 499 1000. You can ring that number. You can send a WhatsApp voice note, 0344 499 1000. We have Amy on the buttons, and the coolest man called Davis is pushing some other buttons, and he's got a he looks like something out of Marvel to avoid some funny smells in his nose, but more of that coming up. So what's been happening today, my friends? Well, what hasn't been happening? Kemi Badenoch has come out of the blocks eventually. It's only taken her 3 months to say, "I dismissed the idea of an electoral pact with Farage and bloody reform. It's for the birds." It's interesting to me, I don't know what you think, that it seems to be that the Tories are talking more about a pact than reform. Reform has come from nowhere to be leading the Tories. I would have thought the onus was on the Tories to come up with some policies that maybe attracted people to stop saying they're going to vote for reform next time. There seems to be open warfare, certainly on WhatsApp, amongst the Tory faithful as to how best to deal with the momentum, excuse the pun, that reform are gathering. Yesterday, as I said to Ian, there was this incredulous story in the front of the Daily Telegraph that a man escaped deportation from this country despite being a criminal and an illegal migrant and having stolen vast amounts of money because he convinced a judge with a left-wing trendy lawyer that actually his son would suffer because chicken nuggets in Albania weren't up to scratch. And you think I'm taking the mickey today? A Pakistani paedophile has escaped deportation because it would be too harming to his children and they had a right to a life in England. And an illegal immigrant claims her husband can't leave, and neither can she, because the Caribbean would be too hot. The world's gone barking mad. Migration is at the centre of everybody's conversation. It's extraordinary. I don't know if you saw the pictures yesterday. Suddenly Labour, the party of mass migration, are showing pictures of sort of detainees, immigration, illegal migrants being led onto planes and being deported. And suddenly they're saying 19,000 illegals have disappeared since we took control. Is that true? There were the pictures of Trump and the shackled prisoners, and Labour were up in arms. I don't know. Honestly, it's unbelievable. We've got a trade war. Trump's doing his bits. Absolutely fantastic. All of that coming up on Drive. And whatever you'd like to talk about, the ladies are in charge. 0344 499 1000. Now, my first guest this afternoon is a tremendously popular man. Former Deputy Speaker of the House of Commons, former Tory MP for the Ribble Valley. And the only reason he's being invited on is because last time he won plaudits, many of them, for finally being a Tory who came on and said, "We messed up and we got what we deserved." Nigel Evans, a very good afternoon, sir.
What a build-up. Thank you very much, Jeremy.
It was quite a build-up. And last time, I thought you would... somebody pointed out last time, you looked like you were talking from the kitchen of a diner and that things had got so bad that you'd become a chef at the Little Chef somewhere on the road between your old constituency in London.
That is absolutely spot on. I chose what I thought was going to be the quietest service station I could possibly get, and I got that right. And I poked myself into one corner, way away from... any of what I thought were the people working there or the customers, until one lady decided to try and empty all the bins. And she made a hell of a clatter, and I thought, this ain't going well. So I found myself a quiet little room in
the
one of the more
Chef.
exclusive places in the West End.
My friend, welcome. Thank you so much indeed. I just wanted so much to talk about. Let's start with Kemi Badenoch. I mean, I know it's a cheap plug, but there is a book I was given today. It's Kemi Badenoch, Highlights of the First 100 Days of My Leadership. It's absolutely clear, as you can see, Nigel. It's got absolutely nothing in it. She's been very quiet. We've been told that she's been, focusing on what went wrong and working out what needs to be put right. I I've been quite vocal in saying that whilst that's been going on, the Reform Party have stolen a complete march on the Tories because they've been very vocal and they've made a lot of sense to a lot of people. Today she's out the block saying a deal with Farage and Reform is for the birds. Your response, Nigel Evans?
Yeah, well, I think you're right as well about the amount of time we've had to wait for any policy ideas. I told you last time I spoke with you, Jeremy, that we haven't got the luxury of time. We've got local elections coming up in May. And if we tank in those polls, I know some of them have been scrapped in certain parts of the country, which I totally oppose, by the way. But if the Conservatives really do tank in those polls, then I think we're going to find that Kemi is going to face the same sort of problem that Liz Truss faced and others have faced in recent years. It's a real problem. We've got to come forward with ideas, and we have got to come forward with them quickly, because when there's a vacuum, it's going to be filled by somebody. And in this case, of course, we have now, for the first time, got competition from a centre-right party in Reform. They're doing incredibly well in the opinion polls. Yep. In fact, leading most of the opinion polls that I've seen in recent days. And so we have seen a couple of policy ideas coming forward from Kemi, and I welcome those. There's one on immigration, and then there's one on having a form of Department of Government Efficiency, which, as you know, is the department headed up by Elon Musk in America. He's doing incredibly well, finding out where money is being wasted right, left and centre. And we know billions of pounds are being wasted in this country. And so we've got two policy areas. We need a lot more.
It's really interesting. It's really interesting for me, and I'm really, you know, you were a doyen of the Tory party. You still are. You were an MP for a long, long time, and you were so honest, and that's what we love about having you on. To me, she seems to give the impression, as do so many Tories, that, you know, key Tory voters will come back, Labour's a disgrace, everything will be fine, we'll suffer for a few months. I personally will tell you, from doing this show, that underestimates the massive feelings of anger which have been exacerbated, Nigel, by the public so switched off from the Tories after 14 years that they allowed this mob, this shower, this disgusting ideological-based anti-British government to come into power. And I think people are not going to swallow from Kemi Badenoch or the traditional Tory view is they'll come back, because, as you said, there's another player in town, and that player is speaking, and speaking loudly and speaking confidently and attracting. And for Kemi Badenoch to be, what, grabbing stuff from Donald Trump? And, I mean, you know, the obvious thing that I'd say to Kemi Badenoch, you were a government minister for 5 years. Why didn't you attack the civil service and the complete disgrace that is the Blob when you were in government, my darling? That's me being honest.
To be fair to Kemi on that, she was not the Prime Minister then, and she's not the Prime Minister now. She is the leader of the opposition, and there is no God-given right for the Conservatives to be the number two party or the number one party. It's not a case anymore, Jeremy, that it swings back and forth. I believe that we are facing an existential threat to the Conservative Party. And unless we come forward with ideas which resonate with the public, then I think at the next election there's no reason at all that whilst we're on 121, which is really an incredibly low figure of members of Parliament, that should not go down rather than go up.
Let me read you a couple of responses.
Let
me read you a couple of responses because they love you on this station. I mean, Emin Barr says, Nigel Evans is brilliant, speaks common sense and sounds like a genuinely lovely guy. Loving his appearances. Andy in Thatcham says this, Jez, you're right. The Tories let us down over 14 years. Labour is trying to take us back to the socialist 70s. Reform, for me, will be the next government if they continue on the trajectory they are currently on. It's a dead cert. And this is interesting. John Cooper from Hertford for you, Nigel. Regarding the Tories and Reform doing a pact, absolutely no way. I have been a Tory, Jez, all my life, but never, ever again. I cannot express how disgusted I am with them. Their betrayal is unforgivable. If this was the past, many would be sent to the Tower. They're toxic, they're untrustworthy, they're rotten, I'm afraid, to the core, and frankly, they have only themselves to blame. And I think, I'm not knocking you because you're great, but John Cooper in Hertford, I think he speaks for a lot of people, Nigel Evans, I really do.
No, of course he did. And John is absolutely spot on that we let the public down over a period of time. I mean, my goodness me, we had a revolving door on Downing Street during the last 5 years. It was. I remember once I fell over and had a bit of concussion. I went to the St. Thomas's Hospital, and the lady, when she was checking me in, she said, "I just need to ask you a few questions." First question is, can you name the current Prime Minister? And I thought, hey, that might have been an easy question 10 years ago, but not these days.
I thought you were going to say, I thought you were going to say, I fell over, got concussion, went to St Thomas's Hospital, and when I woke up the following morning, we had yet another bloody Prime Minister that was Tory in Downing Street. Talking about one of the things that really caused anger yesterday amongst the listeners and the callers. And please, by the way, when you're listening to Nigel, whatever you want to talk about in the show, you know the score. 0344 499 1000. Should Reform do a deal with the Tories? Are the Tories dead? Can they come back? Yesterday, Nigel, front of the Telegraph, I mean, this extraordinary nugget gate, I'm sure you read it. I'm going to get a lefty lawyer to convince a tribunal that I have to stay here because my son might not like the food in another country. Today, two more of these stories. Love your response. A Pakistani paedophile escaped deportation because it would harm his children. Let's not think of the children this paedophile abused, by the way, in brackets. An illegal immigrant claims her husband and she can't leave because they'd find the Caribbean too hot. Now, we can sit here and we can laugh, but for me, those stories and the one yesterday is central to whatever side your politics is. People need to understand this, politicians, would-be politicians. There are millions of people in this country, Nigel Evans, who have never asked for Jack, who've never broken the law, who have paid their taxes. I say this every day for a reason. And who are going, sorry, so I'm eighth in the queue? You can come here and get everything, and now you're a paedophile who can abuse kids, and some idiot of a judge, probably funded by my bloody tax, is going to say it's all right for him to say. That is an embarrassment to the United Kingdom, Nigel, isn't it? An embarrassment.
Yeah, it's a total embarrassment, and this abuse of the judicial system has got to stop. The fact is that if you're an illegal immigrant in here and you're being caught, then the expectation surely is that you are going to leave the country. I mean, that's what they're doing in the United States of America, and it's being roundly applauded. I know you get the odd celebrity crying crocodile tears because people are being removed from the United States of America. But I got to say, when Donald Trump stepped out into the stadium at the Super Bowl, he got roundly cheered. When the cameras went on to Taylor Swift, she got booed. So I got to say, you know, when somebody actually... and I once said this in a speech about Donald Trump when people were whinging about him. I said, you know, he's going to go down in history as the only president to be condemned for carrying out the promises that he made.
And you know what? I jump in, and you're absolutely right. Somebody rang the show the other week. You were probably working in Little Chef, so you didn't hear. And this bloke said, look, I'm not a massive Donald Trump fan, and I'm sure he said, like others, there's things he says and things he doesn't say that I loathe. But he said, I'll tell you this, imagine a leader standing up and saying to its people, or a would-be leader, I'm going to make you financially better off by lowering your taxes and making food cheaper and electricity and generally, you know, energy cheaper. I'm going to make your streets safer, your borders safer, and I'm going to make you proud of your nation again because I'm going to stop the rest of the world ripping us off. Oh, what? He's a fascist, is he? No. Actually, that appeals to people who, be it through COVID, the cost of living, are struggling. And he absolutely, in my mind, got the pulse of the American public. And somebody, whether it's the Tories, whether it's Reform, whether it's Labour, somebody needs to understand the British people are crying out for that, Nigel Evans. That's my opinion.
Yep. He got 49% of the vote, so I'm not going to take any lectures from any lefty Labour lot in this country who are going to tell me or lecture me when they only got 34% of the vote. And we're carrying through policies that, quite frankly, are quite the opposite of what they said during the general election. I mean, there are so many policies that they brought through, and the latest one, clearly, council tax is going up, when there is video after video of Labour politicians, including Keir Starmer telling us that there will be no increase in council tax. So I think Donald Trump is actually carrying out the policies that he was elected on. He's now being cheered from the rooftop. And I don't think that they would take any of this nonsense that the Caribbean is too hot for people to go back to when they illegally entered the United States. We should have the same policy in the United Kingdom.
Just on this as well, there were pictures very early on in his presidency, sort of 2 or 3 days. You saw these, and they were, by the way, drug criminal migrants, illegal migrants, shackled in chains and being led onto planes. It led to the standoff with Colombia. The Colombian president jumped up, then he sat down again. Yesterday, and this has been blasted by Nigel Farage, who says that this is feeble, and I'm not quite sure the levity of this. 19,000, apparently, according to Labour, all of a sudden, 19,000 illegals have been frog-marched out of this country, citing 5,000 enforced returns, 3,000 foreign criminals being... We're on top of this. There's the footage going now. Is this playing politics? Because this has come from absolutely nowhere. This is the party of migration, isn't it, man?
That's right. Well, I can remember when Tony Blair was Prime Minister and they decided to not take derogations from the new entrants into the European coming into the United Kingdom when Germany stopped them coming and France stopped them coming. And we were told by Tony Blair only 16,000 would come in, and then over 1 million came in. So we really do have a party that seems to welcome immigration into the United Kingdom. And they know that immigration is one of these lightning issues now that people really feel very strongly about. They want to see, now we've left the European Union, the United Kingdom, controlling our borders. What is the one policy, Jeremy, that harmed Rishi Sunak and the Tories more than any others? It was that we promised to put people onto planes and to send them home, and we failed to do so.
You were there. You were there. You were there. Explain to me, explain to the people listening, all 11 of them, why did the Conservative government fail? Why didn't they, knowing that this was central to what the British public wanted, why didn't they deliver that if Donald Trump did it within 3 days? Why?
Well, there was all sorts of judicial tricks that were being played to ensure that the planes never took off the ground. And in the end, my own view is that Rishi Sunak had decided that he wasn't going to succeed with this policy and therefore decided to go for the early general election, which cost so many of my colleagues and myself our jobs. The fact is that we should have really had the determination and resilience of Donald Trump in delivering a policy that we had promised right from the very outset. In 2019, we said we were going to get Brexit done, which gave Boris his due. We did do. And then we were going to control our own borders, which is one of the reasons why a ton of people up in the northwest of England, where I was representing, voted Tory, many of them for the first time in seats like Hyndburn, in seats like Burnley. They were coming to... Burnley had never been Tory, ever. And all of a sudden had put a Tory MP in. Why? Because the Labour Party tried to stop Brexit and they really didn't care about controlling immigration. We let the people down. And thank goodness now there does seem to be a bit of a sea change, but we'll see exactly where that goes, Jeremy, because if people are allowed to play judicial tricks and are able to say that their family are going to suffer if they go back to the country like, well, Albania.
Leave the ECHR then. Just leave it. We've left Europe. Leave the bloody thing. If I was Kemi Badenoch, Nigel Farage is nailed on with this. That's what... normal people will listen to that and they'll laugh. Those stories about nuggets and harming his children and the husband will be too hot. We can laugh, but the serious side of that is that makes a mockery. Nigel, will you do me a favour? I'm going to ask you on air. Come on every week, mate. You're fantastic to have on the show. Please, please, please. Just
I always enjoy chatting with you.
Make sure you get a break from working in the Little Chef, and good luck with the chip basket later. There you have him, ex-Deputy Speaker of the House of Commons. Good man as well. Nigel Evans, former Conservative MP for Ribble Valley. To the phone lines, if you want to be on, by the way, Mia's taking your calls today. 0344 4191000. Text to 87222. Let's go to Basingstoke. Simon, you're on Talk Drive. Good evening.
Good evening. I'm sorry for Mr. Evans, but that dog doesn't hunt. The Tory party had an 80-seat majority. They could have left the ECHR. Yep. They should have left the 1951 UN Convention.
Yep.
They should have abolished the Supreme Court, reversed every single policy that Tony Blair introduced. in terms of Reform having an alliance with the Tories, I'm a Reform Party member. I will leave my membership if they even dream about doing it.
Can I jump in on you with this? Because I've got a really strong opinion on this, backed up by some fact as well. But here's what is, to me, and I put it to Nigel, what I will say about Nigel Evans is he's one of the very few Tory politicians who admits absolutely that his government messed up. It cost him his job, but he's still there. He's not convinced, by the way, by the new leadership or by what they're doing. You can hear that in his voice. What I think is really interesting, and we've heard today that, you know, in heated WhatsApp debates, hopefully without anti-Semitic jokes like the Labour Party, the Tories are split between, you know, some think Reform could play a pivotal role in a pact to destroy the left forever. Others are like, whatever. All the language, all the talk, all the verbal stuff is coming from the Tories. Reform has grown that much and is centralising into a fighting machine, in my humble opinion. If Nigel Farage adds 2% a year for the next 4 years, he's on 34%, he wins the majority. The Reform people aren't talking about a pact. It's the Tories, because they're going backwards, Simon, in Basingstoke. That's a fact, isn't it?
It is a fact, and no one will ever. It will take a couple of generations for people to ever trust them again. Any political party that has Rory Stewart in it and calls itself conservative is being very economical with the truth.
Agreed.
And I think you're underestimating how well Reform will do.
No, I'm not. No, I'm not at all. I think they will form the next government. People laugh at me when I say that. I'm utterly convinced that you're right about a generation in time, because what will happen is, and I think Baden not stuck in this. I think she thinks that the Labour Party policies are so rubbish that within a couple of months or a couple of years, everybody will be crying for the Tories. What she's missing the point is there is now, for many on the right, we're not far right, by the way, traditional probably Tory voters, there is a really attractive, viable alternative, and that's called the Reform Party. That's a fact.
Well, Jeremy, I would say that we're not far right, we're just right. That's what we are. And the Labour Party is about to prove that by plunging this country into a deep recession and do economic damage. And they will be equally unelectable as a political party for generations after what they do.
Couldn't agree more. Simon in Basingstoke, great to have you on. 4:24, we're live across the UK. Talk Drive till 7 if you want to be part of this vain attempt at a programme. 0344. Why am I giving the number out when Mia's leaving the studio? You're supposed to answer the phones, woman. She's changed. Showbiz does that to people. Jodie, put your foot down. 0344 499 1000. This is Talk Drive.
I think the increase in ethnic diversity among Gen Z has caused this split. I mean, you say, for example, Stonewall lobbying for the ability for gay people to go about their daily business and not be attacked, right? If you then import a large diaspora of Muslims, second and third generation, according to Henry Jackson Society polling, are more likely to be intolerant, even if they're university educated, then you've increased that level of homophobia or intolerance or illiberalism,
and yet the same group of people support both.
Exactly. So you're almost engineering your own crisis.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Mention anything on air. Welcome back. This is Talk Drive. JK 70344 499 1000. Thank you to Nigel Evans. Immigration seems to be at the forefront of most people's minds. We've got our first voice note proving that Jodie is far more popular than Ryan. Tony, go.
Hi, Jeremy, mate. Tony from Bradford here again. You're absolutely 100% correct. This socialist government we've got in the moment and all these cronies, they hate Britain, they hate our way of life, and they try to destroy us with all these policies. They don't care about the pensioners, they don't care about the farmers, and they're just pushing this green agenda down our necks. They're going to bankrupt this country. We need to go forward. We need to get reform in power before it's too late.
Very good, lovely. Tony, you want to leave a voice note on WhatsApp 0344 499 1000. Next, a man who brings such quality to political journalism, chief political correspondent, despite the fact he's the youngest of the son, who spent Christmas in Barbados while I was in bed. Jack Elsom, how are you, son?
Not bad, thank you. Not bad. I wish I was in Barbados. My parents landed today. Do not mention anything. No. Which I told you.
I love life. Right. Anyway, how are you, son?
Yeah, not bad, thank you. Not bad.
I really am sort of fascinated to get as many different people's opinions about what the hell's going on. I'm going to start with actually yesterday's news. If you are what I would call a normal British hard-working person, and you hear on a show like this, or you read in the Telegraph, or you get picked up on newsstands, that over the last 24 hours, you can avoid deportation from this country, right? If you go to a left-wing a left-wing lawyer paid for by the taxpayer who goes to a court who instigates something from the ECHR, and you tell them three things as follows. One, my child don't like chicken nuggets from Albania. It's not even funny, is it? My husband would find the Caribbean too hot. And I know I'm a paedophile, but it would harm my children if they were made to move. Notwithstanding what you've done to kids, you piece of whatever. Mate, we're becoming, I said it earlier to Nigel Evans, we're a laughing stock very soon. That is ludicrous from a moral point of view more than anything, isn't it?
Yeah, and there is a growing school of thought in this country that the ECHR, which we signed up to in the 1950s, just is totally different than what it was meant to be, and is basically frustrating the will of national governments to kick out people that we don't like.
Right, so stop right there. There's a feeling in this country, I haven't met anybody who thinks that the ECR is fit for purpose. 1950, that was 75 years ago. Surely, I mean, we joke about Badenoch and you haven't said anything. I mean, the first thing that any would-be Prime Minister in this country needs to do is stand up and say, we are leaving the ECHR. Jenrick tried it, didn't win the title, did he?
Yeah, and a lot of people now think that it's basically become a political organisation. I mean, parking all of the stuff to do with courts and rapists. I mean, there's a horrible case the other day about a Jamaican man that raped a sleeping woman and then said he couldn't be deported because he'd be discriminated against in Jamaica because he suddenly coughed that he was bisexual. I mean, people will look at these stories and they seem to be in the news every single day.
But mate, these are the ones that go, I'm bisexual, or I've just been, I've been christened a Christian in the River Thames with Russell Brand. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, and right-minded people in this country will look at these stories and just think, what on earth is going on? But it's not just rapists and paedophiles. They're encroaching on a lot of our life, whether that's illegal migration, whether that is on net zero policies. You remember that ruling in Switzerland, which they essentially overruled the national government, where they said they weren't doing enough to cut down on carbon emissions. Now, why a court feels that's in their jurisdiction, feels to a lot of people like complete judicial overreach. And, Keir Starmer is pretty wedded to the European Court, so there's never going to be an argument in the Labour Party about whether we leave or not. You would think there is a growing school of thought in the Tory Party that we should do so, but Kemi Badenoch seems to be almost pussyfooting around that at the moment and is leaving all of that space to Nigel Farage, who's been pretty crystal clear that he would do it in a heartbeat. And
it's interesting, that's the other subject of the day, isn't it? Reform, very vocal for 5 MPs. You see them out yesterday with the farmers. Fantastic support from Farage and Tice. You see them talking about that appalling situation at Manchester Airport where the police were rightly suspended. The 2 Muslim men, it took months, right? They've made more noise, I think, than the rest of them put together. Badenoch, I've heard nothing from her. And I've been saying it repeatedly. I've been told she's away, working out where they went wrong. It's pretty obvious to me. And working out what she needs to say. Today she comes out and she says, anybody that talks about a deal with Farage and Reform UK, that's for the birds. Now, I don't know whether she, a genuine comment here, and I'd love your take, whether she's still of the mindset that as a Tory, as the leader of the most established political party, there's sarcasm before you start texting me, all I've got to do is wait for Labour to mess up a bit more, the opinion polls will turn, and in 5 years, 4 years, I'll be the Prime Minister. Because if that's what she thinks, she's missing what the British people are thinking, which is, right, I think, love your take, the British people have finally gone, we've had 14 years of Tory, then we have Labour, then we have Tory. Do you know what? Actually, you can complain that Farage might have some rough edges like Trump. You can say that Richard Tice this or Rupert Lowe that. Actually, the fact of the matter is, maybe we'd be better off, maybe we wouldn't. But you know what? A bit like Trump, why don't we give somebody else a goddamn chance? Because you know what? It couldn't be any goddamn worse than it is. And I think that's what people think.
You're right, and often through the years we've had a 2-party system, and often you get third parties in the periphery that make a lot of noise but then don't end up doing well in the polls. And I think last time the Labour did very well because they essentially weren't the Tories and the Tories imploded.
Yeah, absolutely.
Kemi Badenoch is banking on the same strategy, I think, that she is not Labour, they're going to implode and therefore she'll be in the ascendancy. The landscape's totally different now because Reform not only are sort of doing well and making all the noise, but they're also doing incredibly well in the polls to the point they've overtaken the Tories. Now, whether or not they can sustain that for the next 4 years, that's question number one. Whether or not they can then get the ground campaign, which they've been lacking in the past, getting grassroots activists knocking on doors and therefore building up momentum and council seats and local elections and then
which
doing well...
Which are being cancelled by the Labour Party anyway.
And then managing to thwart the first past the post system so they can do it. If they manage to do both those things, then this could be existential for the Conservative Party. And I think Kemi Badenoch has realised that. She has actually realised that, but her actions don't seem to match her words. She's identified there's a serious problem coming down the tracks in the form of Nigel Farage, but I think a lot of people in the Tory Party think she could just do a bit more to sort of try and blunt that threat, because at the moment it feels that Nigel Farage and his pals are the ones who are getting all the noise and all the oxygen.
But what they're doing, Farage and his pals, it doesn't wash for Starmer or anybody else to go, oh, far-right rubbish. They are speaking the language that so many traditional Tory voters, and the Sun would know this, Talk would know this, traditional right-of-centre voters, not far-right thugs, by the way, but people who want safe streets, safe borders, low taxation, a strong military, all that stuff that I was brought up on, that has disintegrated in this quest for net zero, or we've got to make sure people don't use hurty words. The problem that Kemi Badenoch is she's trying to please, like I think almost every Tory leader in 1997 since Maastricht, you're too young. There's 2 wings to the Tory party. Yeah. There is 2 wings. Now, Farage has identified that. Jenrick tried to. I think that it will be a long, long way back for the Tory, genuinely for the Tory party. What I suspect will happen is that Farage, there'll be 3 parties with 200 seats. That's what I think will probably happen. I'd love a difference. I voted Reform last time. I've been very honest about that. But at the end of the day as well, I think they're making one massive mistake, the Tories, if they just think the British public are going to roll over and go, we're coming back to you. Yeah. We're not.
It's so difficult, isn't it? Because I think the holy grail for Tory leaders is that coalition which Boris Johnson stitched together in 2019, where he kept on to all of those seats in the south, which the Tories traditionally had, but then also the Red Wall reforms, Red Wall sort of seats, old Labour seats, which Labour won back in the north. that coalition is gone. I don't think you're going to be able to appease both because Brexit was a real dividing line, and Jeremy Corbyn was a factor which managed to basically unite that
Boris
coalition.
Johnson wasn't strong enough, and you never heard me criticise Boris Johnson. He should have done what Trump's done and said, I've got a majority, you can stick it. This is what we're doing.
Yeah, and people blame him for the massive spike in migration which he presided over during his few years in power. I think the problem with Kemi Badenoch now is that clearly she wants to be able to win seats back off Labour, and so therefore she doesn't want to go too far right. But if she goes but then if she does that, then Nigel Farage is going to be laughing because he's going to be eating into all of those votes on the right wing, and so she's basically in this massive bind here, and she's really struggling how to pitch herself to get out of it. The problem as well...
You can't struggle on the job though, mate, can you?
You can't, and she hasn't got long. And the problem as well is that with Nigel Farage, she is coming up against, I think by common consensus, one of the best political orators of the modern age, and he is so good at not only making great speeches at communicating, but also he's mastered social media as well, and he's doing so well to get views on TikTok and sort of new platforms, the type of platforms which over in the US Donald Trump managed to springboard towards the US.
I want to go to a call. No, he's gone. The caller was there, he's gone. Don't worry about that. Jack, I really appreciate you being on. Just a question for you. Do you want to win? Are you allowed to enter this competition? Do you want to win £25,000 tax-free?
Yeah.
All right. This is our Jack Elsom, who works for us, could win 25 grand and you lot. Pin back your goals.
It's competition time, and we're giving you a chance to win a whopping £25,000. So what do you need to do to get involved? All you have to do is text the word prize to 83338, or you can enter by post. It's as simple as that. Once again, to get involved, just text the word prize to 83338, or you can enter by post.
18 plus, UK excluding NI. Enter by SMS for £2 plus one standard network charge by 11 p.m. on March the 3rd, 2025. Or send your name, email and contact number to £25,000 cash competition, PO Box 3190, Colchester CO2 8GP, to arrive by 5 p.m. on March the 6th, 2025. This is a News Broadcasting Network promotion. Full terms and conditions at talksport.com.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Way to wake up, my friends. The best breakfast show in the land by a mile. Mike Graham's Morning Glory, part of our lineup here on the home of free speech and common sense, as used by Donald Trump. This is Talk 0344 499 1000. Mia taking your calls. We go to London. This is a posh man. Tarquin, a very good afternoon to you.
Jezza, how the devil are you, sir?
I'm jolly good, actually. This evening I shall be having a snifter. But there we go. Before that, Tarkers, my old son, what can I do for you?
Nigel Evans was nearly as posh as me, was he not?
Yes, and he gets out the bath to have a wee, Tarkin, which we know you don't. So what's happening?
I never do.
No. What's happening, kiddo?
Right, what are they? Serious point you made here earlier on, Jeremy. This is going to be a reform landslide. It's a given. We know, you know that, I know that, the Blob knows that. Now, this is my point about the Blob. There's no point winning a massive landslide if we are thwarted after 4 or 5 years. The Blob digs their heels in and scuppers everything that we're trying to achieve. So the first thing we need to do is this. Nigel and the gang needs to set up immediately bureaucratic snatch squads to dive into those departments and grab hold of these and stop them from doing what they're doing, which is the liberal globalist elite job. We need to grab them. We need to put our people in place because that's what we're facing here. Otherwise, anything we achieve is going to be completely pointless. Do you understand?
I tell you what I do believe, and I think you're absolutely right. I repeat this almost daily, and it's probably because of my age, but some wise old sage told me once that when a government falls, it might have been Peter Cardwell. No, it would have been, no. Somebody told me that when a government falls, only 200 people lose their jobs. 100 government ministers and 100 special, right and left-handed men and women, logistical help, that sort of thing, special advisors. The Blob, which, by the way, has increased by £10,000 in the 9 months Starmer's been there, stays with its own agenda. Remember that terrible story last year where, and I wasn't a fan of Rwanda, but our very own Home Office officials using taxpayers' money to take its own democratically elected government to court because they disagreed.
Exactly.
If I know one, and I could be wrong, but I suspect that if Nigel Farage ever made it to 10 Downing Street, on day one, like Donald Trump, he would fire most of the civil service in Whitehall. And that might result in a lot of people going, oh my God. But actually, that's what needs to happen. 1,000,000% that needs to happen.
We need a UK Department of Government Efficiency, our own version of exactly what Elon and the gang are doing right now. We need one too, otherwise we're knackered. Yeah.
Good man. Tarquin, thank you for your call. 17 minutes to 5, live across the UK. You want to be on? 0344 499 1000 is the number to Mia. Voice notes to Jodie, 0344 499 1000. Next up, from the centre of migration, I love this man, Robert Bates. A very good afternoon. Welcome to Drive.
Hi, Jeremy. Thanks for having me.
Well, listen, I'm going to start with a news story because this is going to send me straight through the bleeding roof. We've talked, have we not, about, apparently the Home Office have actually deported 19,000 people since they took power. It's interesting to me. Nigel Farage has criticised it, saying it's a bit feeble and the timing's a bit dodgy because actually the Labour Party is the party of migration. But all of a sudden, this threat from reform seems to have focused Starmer and Yvette Cooper's minds, and they're now saying, and I want people to understand this, we have removed 19,000 illegal migrants since they took power. We've just been given a story in the Telegraph. Have you read this?
I have, yes, yeah.
This is unbelievable. You will have seen the deportation flight, ladies and gentlemen. This is what the Labour Party used as coverage. We saw it on camera. It's right, isn't it? Robert saying, these people were sent back. The Airbus 321, ladies and gentlemen, which can carry 220 passengers, actually took 47 Albanian illegal migrants home to their country of birth last month. They were convicted criminals. Let's not credit, by the way, Starmer too much because it was the Tories that did a deal with the Albanian government. The estimated cost to us, the British taxpayer, of sending these criminals home was £22,000 per person. £1 million of money. Robert Bates, his country's on its backside, man.
It's absolutely crazy. What we've paid for there is effectively a PR opportunity for Keir Starmer and Yvette Cooper to masquerade as if they were hardline on this issue. They're trying to obviously stave off the threat from reform. 19,000, the number of people they've deported, is absolutely negligible. We've got 1.2 million illegal migrants in this country, so we're barely touching the tip of the iceberg when it comes to these actual deportations. And the fact of the matter is, what we need to start having a conversation about is, I'm all for spending money to remove people from the country. I'd happily spend billions to make sure that we didn't have any illegal migrants in this country. But I think there's a point of fairness here. And I think these individuals in particular from Albania, they've probably come into the UK illegally. They've probably ended up working in the black or grey market, earning a lot of proceeds, whether that be from nefarious means or via Deliveroo and other kind of delivery companies. We should be taking money off these individuals to pay for their flights home. We shouldn't, as the British taxpayer, be expected to stump up the astronomical amounts that we are having to at the moment to remove these people. We should also be looking to properly charge and sanction those companies that are hiring these people with improper practices and actually drawing them into the country in the first place.
This is so right, and obviously in the end I'm just going to be carried off to a section to be sectioned somewhere, because I go further. And I've said this, and some of my colleagues here think I'm mad. I want to know what you think, right? This whole migration thing was explained to me years ago by Blair and his lot by saying, you know, we need people to come into this country to do those jobs, you know, like hospital porters and delivery drivers and all the things that you've just said. And then I think to myself, but we've got 3 million people on benefits, probably more. And then, of course, the Blob say to me, yeah, but Jez, they're all disabled and mentally ill. No, they're not. Let's say 1 million aren't. I'd close the borders and I'd make the 1 million people, Robert, who are being paid by the British taxpayer to do sweet nothing every week for their good and the country's good, off your backside. You go be a hospital porter, you go be a delivery driver. We'll pay you your doll whilst you're looking, but whilst you're looking, with our help, we expect something in return. Is that shocking? No, it makes perfect fiscal sense. We need a Prime Minister and a government in this country that are not scared to stand up and say, the Blob's got to go. We're going to deport people. We're going to say to people who have chosen, I'm afraid, and don't send me messages saying, I know there's many people who can't, out of choice, are on, not out of choice, are on benefits, and I have great sympathy, but there's many people, it's become a career choice, and that, to me, is fundamentally what's wrong with this country, Robert. Fundamentally.
No, you're absolutely right. And I think if you ask most people in their 20s and 30s and ask them to kind of conduct a survey of their friendship group, they know at least one individual that is quite proudly, you know, pulling the wool over the eyes of the DWP and, you know, quite happily lounging around on that kind of lifestyle that is enabled to them. There's a bigger point as well. Of course, we were told that immigration was absolutely essential and, you know, it's needed for economic growth. It's actually causing us economic decline. GDP per capita, as we know, is in absolute freefall. People are now worse off and have a worse quality of life than they did even a few years ago, thanks to the immigration that we saw under the Conservative Party. But many of those coming into the country aren't even working. In 2019, which is the last year for which we have data, there were over 1 million people that were born outside of the country that were actually claiming benefits as well. So far from bringing this huge economic growth and, you know, the graphs going through the roof and everyone living in the land of milk and honey, we're actually getting a lot worse and having to subsidise the lifestyle choices of people that are in this country allegedly to help improve the country, but are actually just dining out on it.
I mean, and I think that's the point. And I think that, you know, for the people who will say to me, and I get this point, they'll say, but Jeremy, the thing is, Great Britain's always been the leader in morality and the leader in helping people. And I get that. But the fact of the matter is, whether it's the cost of living, whether it's Brexit, whether it's lockdown, I don't know. This country's skint. And there are many, many, many hard-working men and women, not just in London, Starmer, north of Watford Gap, me old son, you know, that's a reality, and south of Watford Gap, who have done nothing wrong in their lives. They've done everything right, and they feel like they're second-class citizens now, and that is why I feel those are the people that need to be listened to. But yeah, the story for you, just to repeat before we let you go, a deportation flight filmed by the Home Office that was part of a publicity stunt, we feel, to convince the British public from this Labour government that they had this under control when they announced 19,000 have gone. It was actually 47 Albanian illegal migrants. The deal had already been done by the Tories with Albania. And the cost of flying 47 criminals home is to be met by you, my tax-paying friends, £1 million, 22 grand a head. Sum it up, Robert Bates. Sum up what's wrong with this country, my friend.
An absolute farce. We've got cowards in government at the moment who are frankly more beholden to international law and their, as you said, Islington, North London chums than they are actually protecting the interests of the British public. And the worst bit is that they're deliberately lying to us now. They're trying to pull the wool over our eyes. 3/4 of those people that the Labour Party are bragging about having deported were voluntary returns. So these were people that actually volunteered to be sent back to their home country in the first place. So it's not as if Labour have sent in, you know, SWAT teams and confiscated people and plucked people out of car washes and said, right, you're being removed. They've actually had people come to them and say, you know, this lifestyle that I'm having to live in as a result of being here irregularly and not having access to certain provisions of the state is making things too difficult. So I will volunteer to return. So the Labour Party are lying to us. The Conservatives were no better. And we're in for a very dire 5 years until we can hopefully sort things out in 2029.
Great to have you on, the Research Director for the Centre for Migration Control, the excellent Robert Bates. Thank you for being on Talk Drive, 10 to 5, 0344 499 1000. Hello to Karina in South Wales. She says, I was just wondering what Jez was identifying today as. A 21-year-old, ripped, fit, really sexy radio presenter with a huge audience and his whole life in front of him. This is Talk Drive.
I mean, yesterday we had the ludicrous story of the guy from Albania who couldn't be deported because his son doesn't like the idea of eating chicken nuggets that aren't made in Britain. We now today have got an even more ridiculous one, and more serious maybe even, of a paedophile, a Pakistani paedophile, who's a father of several children, jailed for child sex offenders, sex offences I should say, who can't be deported back to Pakistan because it might be harmful to his children, who he doesn't even live with.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
About 6 minutes to 5. We're live across the UK. Drive on Talk until 7 o'clock. Let's get back. Oh, actually, Jeremy, your thoughts on Farage coming in. This is from Neil. And firing the civil service on day one is for the bleeding birds. Face the facts, Jez. No one party can change anything due to the blob. I don't agree, Neil. I believe we're in a different part of the world and a different time politically, and I believe that the British people will demand their politicians, if elected, do what they ask them to do. And if other people who didn't vote for them don't like it, or the system doesn't like it, get rid of the bloody system. That's how it will work. That's what Trump's doing. So what you think? Caroline, I think something is happening out there, Jez, as reform support grows wherever this term far right is beginning to fall on deaf ears. It's like the boy who cried wolf story, where people stop listening and taking notice. I feel that serious change is needed in this country, and if the Tories won't do it, then reform must. Finally, for now, Dave says, as a Reform member and involved in the party, why do we need to do anything to improve our membership? Labour are our best marketing department and the Conservatives are no longer trusted. It will take a few generations before the Tories will ever become a serious contender again. 0344 499 1000. Straight to the phone lines. We'll go to Bedford. Jules, you're on Talk Drive. Couple of minutes. A very good afternoon to you.
Hiya. OK, so this is nitty-gritty, essentially. The reason why Kemi Badenoch has not made any policy announcements is because she's got only two options for that. One, tink around the edges like Sunak, come up with trivial little suggestions that everybody will say are ridiculous. Or two, big picture stuff. The big picture stuff is Equalities Act, Climate Change Act, Human Rights Act. Those are the three millstones round the country's neck. This is what Farage has realised. He says he'll repeal it. She can't because her party is full of people who are in the Liberal Democrats. Basically, that's why she's knackered. Jenrick realised that's what was necessary. That's what he said he would do. He didn't win. Now we're stuck.
You say we're stuck. What, the country or Tory voters?
Yeah, the country. Yeah. The Tory caucus is stuck.
I think it's very interesting as well what I said earlier. I think that the Tories, led by Badenoch, are still under the impression, a majority of them, that all they have to do is sit there and wait patiently for the Labour Party to implode, and the British people will turn to them. I personally believe that the British people won't turn to them anymore because the British people are fed up with the up and down that's been going on for however many years. That's what I think.
Yeah, exactly. The anti-British Labour Party is already hemorrhaging votes to reform. It will continue to do so. And the closer we get to election day, the Conservatives sitting there waiting for their vote to come back, actually, they're going to say, you know what? The Conservatives wasted vote and Reform's going to win a landslide.
Couldn't agree more. Jules in Bedford, thank you very much, Steve. Oh, you're getting very popular, old Jody. Mark, a voice note on Reform and a Tory deal. Go.
Hello, Jeremy. It's Mark in Lancashire. In my opinion, the only reason the Tories now want a deal is quite obviously because they're clearly on the back foot and facing the existential threat of total destruction. For years, they referred to any party to the right of centre or to the right of them. They referred to us all as a bunch of loons and fruitcakes, you know, whether it was UKIP, Brexit Party, now Reform. They've constantly referred to us as a total bunch of loons and dismissed us. Now suddenly they see that we're roaring ahead in the polls. They're on the back foot looking at destruction. There's no way that I'm voting for Reform if they ever make a deal with these wet Tories. That's the end of it.
There you go, Mark on Reform. What do you make of that? 0344 499 1000. Good afternoon to Bob in Clacton. That's Nigel Farage's seat. Bob says, that story is outrageous. You might just have heard me break the news. The deportation flight filmed by the Home Office that the Labour government has used to convince us that actually all is good and we've deported 19,000 illegal migrants since we took power. We're in charge of this. Actually, it was 47 Albanians on a private jet, an Airbus 321 that carries 220 passengers, but it was commandeered by the government. This is true. This is dreadful. 47 Albanian illegal migrants. This wasn't a deal, by the way, that Starmer had done. The Tories, don't you remember that picture of Sunak? Wee Diddy Sunak next to the Albanian Prime Minister, who was 74 foot tall. They did a deal. He sent 47 Albanians back at a cost of £1 million to you, ladies and gentlemen. £1 million. £22,000 a ticket. Bob in Clacton says, I'm pretty sure that a ticket to Albania doesn't cost 22 grand. Why didn't we put them on a cheap cargo plane? Could be true. Andy on immigration, a voice note. Go.
Hello, Jezza. Andy from Bedford here. Just a bit curious. Where was all the lefty lawyers and human rights lawyers when these immigrants were being deported back? You know, like the ones that were there all the time when the Tories tried to do it. Just seems a little bit weird to me, mate. Don't you? Keep up a good show, buddy. See you soon. Bye-bye.
I don't think it's weird, Andy. I think, you know, in the past, people that would say what I'm about to say would say, oh, it's a conspiracy theory. Quite patently, we have successive governments who will use facts and bend them to suit the narrative that they want to impose on the British public. What do you make of what you heard in the first hour of Drive, my friends? News on 5 on the way. 0344 499 1000. You can ring that and speak to Mia right now. Get your call on between now and 7 o'clock. Jody on the WhatsApp and text 28722. Start your message with the word talk. But you, my friends, get the news at 5, which is next on Talk Drive.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hey, my friends, welcome back. Hour 2 of Drive for Tuesday. We're live across the UK. Talk, of course, the home of free speech and common sense. I've got television screens all around me. We've got the A-team. It's like loose women here today. They are all, I know. 0344 499 1000. Mia's on the phone. Jodie's producing the whole shebang because Ryan's having a massage. It's because it's his wife's birthday. Don't even go there. 0344 499 1000. Amy's still smiling, and we've got a bloke who used to star in the Marvel films pushing some buttons. 0344 499 1000. Listen, so many of you sending messages. Jane says perhaps the Tories need to forget the next election and concentrate on the one after that. Because in my opinion, Kemi Badenoch won't be around long enough to fight the next one. Zoe in Lancashire. Afternoon, Jez. What Starmer fails to tell the British public is over half the migrants he is sending back are doing it voluntarily. It's not such a great story, is it now? Steve's in Cambridge. Good afternoon to you, Steve. He says only way the Tories can even think about a comeback will be if they culled all the wets. No cull, no change. 14 years of mismanagement. Why on earth would I ever vote for them again? Jackie, good afternoon to you. No way Reform will do a deal with the Tories. They betrayed Farage, Brexiteers and the communities up and down this country. They allowed our history, our culture and our identity to come under attack. And they did absolutely nothing. The damage they caused this country and its people by lockdown will never, ever, ever be forgiven. Barry, the Tories will always be party before country, careers before conscience. There you go. 0344 499 1000. I literally couldn't be more delighted with my next guest. She's had a stressful day. I won't go into it on air. But I'm delighted to be joined by Talk's international editor, the legend that is Isabel Oakeshott. Good afternoon. How are you?
Are you going to cheer me up? Have you got a way of cheering me up?
How was your? Are we allowed to say? Are we allowed to talk about why you were stressed, or how did it go? Was it all right?
I wasn't stressed because my daughter was getting her ears pierced. That's a great thing. Have you got any piercings, Jeremy? Or should we not?
I have got a piercing, which you well know about, but it's not. I don't think we should be talking about it on air because we're trying to.
You don't know about it. What is this revelation?
Where is my piercing?
I didn't say that, but, you know, feel free to...
Of course I haven't got a piercing. Christ, I can't even cut my toenails without crying. Have you got any piercings?
I've got 2 earrings and that's it.
Hey, good girl. Jodie's like that. She's going to say something outrageous. Isabel Oakeshott, I'm going to start slightly differently, right? I'm going to start slightly differently because this just came in. Nigel Farage, quite vocally this afternoon and this morning, has criticised this Home Office announcement from yesterday that we have immigration, I don't know why I'm doing the voice, under control. We have removed 19,000 illegal migrants. Here is some footage that we filmed. And then you see this big plane with what looks like quite a few people being led up by immigration officials, a bit like the American ones to Colombia, minus the shackles, I might just point out. I've added them. And then this astonishing story that's come out in the Telegraph in the last, hour or so, that flight that was filmed was an Airbus 321, which has a capacity of 220 passengers. What Labour did was film this plane. They only put 47 Albanian illegal migrants, who were convicted criminals, by the way, on this plane. Only 47 of them. This, by the way, was not a plan organised by Starmer, because we shouldn't give the Tories any credit, but they'd done a deal with the Albanians. So, in effect, what we're saying is that 47 Albanian prisoners got on a flight to Albania on Monday. And do you know how much this cost, Isabel Oakeshott? Any idea?
I'm guessing we're around about the £1 million.
£1 million, £22,000 per person. This is PR at its worst by our government spending taxpayers' money to try and convince us they've got this under control. What an absolute joke, Isabel, isn't it?
Complete and utter joke. You know, these numbers are completely derisory relative to the scale of the problem, and this is Starmer massively on the back foot. You know, his party is currently literally behind Reform in the polls despite his enormous majority in the House of Commons. He's panicking, and they've rustled up this pathetic stunt. Well, taxpayers are not going to be deceived by this, are they? You know, taxpayers are entitled to be absolutely bloody furious that once again their intelligence is being insulted and their hard-earned cash is being squandered arranging exclusive private jet travel for Albanians who, you know, let's be frank,
have broken the law. Have broken the law.
They've broken the law, and what are they getting? 4 seats each or something on the private jet. What an absolute joke, and what a disgrace this government is.
Couldn't agree more. And you used a great word there, sceptical. You know, it doesn't wash for me anymore for Starmer and his acolytes to stand up and say, these people don't understand how difficult it is, just sceptical right-wing thugs. No. This is our money that you're spending, and it's window dressing. I would rather that our government would do something about that. I mean, I know you're going to laugh. We laugh privately about this, but, I mean, yesterday we literally discover that it's possible, if you're a convicted criminal, to get a left-wing lawyer, paid for by you and me and everybody listening, to go to a court in front of a left-wing judge and say, I can't go back to Albania or wherever I came from. I know I've broken the law, but my son, he doesn't like the chicken nuggets in Albania. And people think I'm taking that he doesn't like the chicken. Today we discover a Pakistani paedophile escaped deportation because he successfully, through his left-wing lawyer, convinced the judge that it would harm psychologically his children. I don't mean to be rude. You're a mother, I'm a father. Forget the children he harmed and abused and raped. Forget them. An illegal migrant today got to stay in this country because she said her husband, with his skin issues, would find the Caribbean too hot. We're a laughingstock, Isabel. Seriously, we're in danger of becoming a bloody laughingstock. We really are.
But it's the voters that are crying over this, because we're the ones that have to face the consequences of having all these people in the country, in our country, who should not be here. And they're using it as some kind of hotel, despite the fact that many of these people that we're talking about here in these court cases actually have serious criminal records. Yes. And there is a reason that they're being deported. And I tell you, serious countries around the world do not do this to themselves. If somebody breaks the law, they get deported. It is as simple as that. They don't have the option to go bleating to some court and start saying, oh, they might get a bit of eczema in a different climate, or maybe, you know, the frozen food offering isn't quite as good in wherever it may be, Somalia or Eritrea. You know, if you break the law, you're out. You serve your time and you're out. And people are fed up to the back teeth of these loony lawyers who are in some way totally unable to connect with the British people on this. And
we have one of them as our Prime Minister, Isabel, a loony left-wing lawyer who can't connect with the British people.
It sets the wrong tone right from the top, doesn't it? You know, the whole thing rots from the top. That's what we're seeing.
It's really interesting today. I don't know if you've seen this. Have you? I've got this for you. This is highlights from my first 100 days. It's a new bestseller from Kemi Badenoch. Have you had a chance to look at this, Isabel?
Oh, you God. Are you serious?
Look.
Who's it? OK, that's all right then.
That's quite good. There's absolutely bugger all in it.
For a minute, I actually thought that she had written that.
No, there's nothing in it. Kemi Badenoch said today, I mean, she's been particularly quiet. I've been told, we've been told, you know this, that she's sort of, you know, working out what went wrong. You were liars. Working out what should happen in the future. You haven't got any new plans. Anyway, today she's come out and she's gone, any deal with Farage and those dreadful people at Reform is for the birds. Right, OK. For me, there seems to be, you know, lots of Tories in a WhatsApp war over what to do. I think the narrative is wrong. We both know where our colours are nailed, but why I think the narrative is wrong is the Tories seem to still be in that misplaced mindset that if Labour mess up a lot, Reform will just come and go, and in 3 or 4 years they'll all go, oh, please, can we have the Tories back? I don't think the Tory party, and I include its leader most definitely, is taking Reform UK seriously enough. Reform UK is going nowhere. As somebody just said, there feels like something real is happening in this country, and I think that's true.
I felt that Kemi Badenoch to say any deal is for the birds was extremely arrogant, because she didn't mean it as in, yeah, we the Tories should be so lucky. She meant it as, we're never going to do that because we're the Conservatives and we don't have to grub around with those deplorable people who are populist reformers. That's what she meant, you know, and I've heard this for years from the Conservatives. They think that, you know, they are in some way absolutely entitled to exist forevermore, and that they should never have to, you know, really take any competition seriously. And Kemi, in one way, she's right. A deal is for the birds, because there is no way Nigel Farage is going to do a deal with Kemi Badenoch. That is never going to happen. This started over the weekend with a completely concocted story in the Mail on Sunday saying that there was going to be some kind of super party that amalgamated Reform and Boris Johnson. It was a completely made up piece of nonsense that has somehow managed to get some momentum this week when it's based on absolutely nothing, because the Reform Party leadership wants nothing to do with the Conservative Party. Of course, the Reform Party will take MPs from the Conservative Party who are good enough for reform. They can defect if they want, but I don't think Reform is going to be kowtowing to the Conservatives. They are out to destroy the Conservatives, and frankly, the way Kemi Badenoch is running her leadership, that shouldn't be too difficult.
It's quite interesting for me. When I meant narrative, it seems to be that a lot of the verbal is from the Tory side. Oh, should we, shouldn't we? The Reform Party is simply getting on and doing what they said they would get on and do. I want to put something to you that somebody was talking about before. I was talking about how the Blob, you know, only 200 people lose their jobs when a government falls, 100 ministers, 100 special advisors. The Blob, which has increased by 10,000 since Starmer, there's wishful thinking, since Starmer came to power. This guy went, he used the birds. Did you talking rubbish, Jess? It's for the birds. There's no way that any politician in this country can arrive in 10 Downing Street and get rid of the Blob. They will always control, nothing will happen. And you point to Donald Trump. And then if you're me, you want to say to anybody with a brain cell, maybe we need to find a politician who doesn't care about being attacked by the media, who doesn't care about threats from whatever part of the system doesn't like what they're going to do, but stands on the steps of 10 Downing Street and says, I got elected to rinse the Blob. I got elected to make sure this, and it's going to happen. And if I last a week or a month or a year, I'm going to be true to my word to the British people. That is what the British people want. Whether that's Nigel Farage, whether it's Kemi Badenoch, whether it's that idiot that's there now, the British people are fed up, I think, with second-rate liars who don't do what they say they're going to do. That's how I see it.
So Liz Truss tried to do this, didn't she?
Yeah.
She entered government trying to not only do her economic measures, which was so controversial, but she also wanted to cut a swathe through the Blob. And one quick example was that they tried to fire the most senior civil servant in the Treasury. And all hell broke loose, as we all know. And ultimately, before not very long at all, she and her Chancellor were both ousted. So what's the difference next time round? Let's say Reform or another incredibly imaginative, creative party that might emerge from somewhere. I don't know what that would be. But anyway, let's say that they tried to do similar. Why wouldn't they suffer the same fate as Liz Truss? I think the answer is because Liz Truss was at the tail end of far too many years of failing Tory administrations. There was not the public appetite or support for her. It would be very different if a party like Reform had been swept into government on a mandate to do just this. And I think that they would try extremely hard to force it through. And I think people would have seen nothing like it.
Isabel, you know, we're very honest. Can you hear a very strange noise from the studio?
No, what is that?
I feel like I'm being invaded. It's a really, really bizarre. No, there's a. Look.
Really?
Stop now. So honestly, you see what's happening? It's old age. It's my 60th year. Going back to what you were saying, it's all gone a bit weird. I agree. Maybe I'm idealistic. It's going to take. Should the will of the people not be greater than the system that it represents? I don't know. I just think that most people with a brain cell know that unelected civil servants on ridiculous salaries who seemingly are unsackable. Somebody said to me the other day, you can't sack that person. I am turning into my father. If they're crap at their job or they don't do what you tell them and you're paying their salary, why can't you get rid of them? What is wrong with that?
Yeah, well, I think that that is something that has to be tested, isn't it? Far too many people say, oh, you can't do this or you can't do that. You know, you can't test international law by turning back the boats. You can't, we hear this all the time, don't we? You can't change certain international agreements. What about the Chagos thing? Oh, apparently we can't defy a recommendation from some international authority about the Chagos Islands. I say let's give it a go and let's see if the sky falls in, because I kind of guess it probably won't. And if it's an expensive experiment, well, doing what we're doing at the moment is sure as hell pretty damn expensive. Maybe spend the money in a better way, trying out and seeing if there's a way out of it.
Breaking news, and you must respond, our international talk editor right now. This just in, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu responding to Hamas at this time yesterday, saying the ceasefire's been broken, we won't be releasing any more hostages. Donald Trump overnight says you've got till 12 noon on Saturday or hell will break loose. Just now, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says that if Hamas does not return hostages by noon on Saturday, he doesn't say all, he says hostages, the ceasefire will end and the military will return to intense fighting until Hamas is defeated. The one thing I would pick out of that, he doesn't say all the hostages. Trump said that, but that's the Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu just responding. If Hamas does not continue the return of hostages by noon on Saturday, the ceasefire will end. Isabel Oakeshott, your response, please.
Well, very sharp of you to pick up on that wiggle room there. He's allowing Hamas to perhaps just release one or two between now and then. But it's certainly a very dramatic escalation. You know, I think I was on with you when the ceasefire was first declared, and we were exercising quite a lot of caution at the time. It's proven to be even more fragile, I think, than one feared at that time. For it to have apparently disintegrated this quickly is deeply disappointing. At least we have got some of the hostages returned, but that will be of little consolation to the relatives of those that are still in captivity, either alive or their bodies have not been released to their loved ones.
Chris Parry, Rear Admiral Chris Parry, was on the show yesterday. He was quite outspoken. I'd love your take on this. He said and he said, I'm just being honest, the outroar internationally, and quite right, on the state of those hostages that were released last week and the disgusting game that Hamas played. Oh, are you looking forward to seeing your wife and daughter? Because, by the way, when you get in the real world, you'll discover they're dead. I mean, vile, absolutely vile. He wondered, he threw it in, Chris Parry, yesterday, as to whether there are any more alive or whether they want to buy a bit of time to try and make them look less. I mean, destroyed would be the best example I can give. I don't know. But Netanyahu...
I don't think they care.
You what?
I don't think these monsters care how broken their captives are when they are released. But I think that the bigger question is where the hell does this all end? Because Trump's real estate idea is just not getting any traction from neighbouring countries. And I see that he's now threatening to withdraw US aid to countries like Jordan if they don't agree to take a load of refugees.
He's actually right now in the White House, because I've just seen this, with the King of Jordan. So they presumably are talking about that. I mean, what did you make of his suggestion about Gaza? That was a bit ludicrous, wasn't it? Or am I missing the point?
Nobody is taking it seriously in the region. Conversation has now moved to, is the two-state solution dead? And I think, around the region, people just can't see how the two-state solution can work. What's the point of continuing to do and try for what we've been trying to get for the last few decades to no avail? So perhaps a way forward, some are saying, is some kind of semi-autonomous region that Gaza would become. A bit like devolution, but it would still have to be under the auspices of Israel. Is Hamas going to agree to that? I mean, it would be a pretty hard sell, wouldn't it? Because all they would see would be Israel being at the top of the tree there.
Completely.
So I don't know where this goes, but no way good at this point.
Really good to have you on. I know you've had a stressful day, and I'm glad the ear piercing went well. Thank you so much indeed. The legend that is Isabel Oakeshott, Talk's international editor, 522. So that breaking news, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has just said that if Hamas does not return hostages by noon on Saturday, the ceasefire will end and the military will return to intense fighting. I did pick that out because he says does not return hostages by noon on Saturday. You'll remember the original ceasefire deal said, you give us 3 hostages every week, says Israel, you can have hundreds of convicted murderers. I know, doesn't make sense, but that was the deal. Trump said overnight, all the hostages by midday on Saturday, or all hell will break loose. He did say, though, it's up to Israel. But there's room for manoeuvre. Isabel is absolutely right. Does not return hostages by noon on Saturday. 1, 2, the remaining all, I've no idea. If you want to be on, 0344 499 1000. Text to 87222. Talk Drive is on.
Keir Starmer refers to people like me and you as far right because we challenge immigration, or we want prison to be harsh, or we want villains locked up. They see the world through that view. There's hardly any senior officers who are ex-armed forces anymore. There used to be about 50% of the senior officers. And so what you have is this liberal elite who believe in everything that you see on the net zero, mass immigration, liberal views on the punishment of criminals. They belong to that same club.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
5:26, we're live across the UK. This is Talk Drive, the radio station that just talks about free speech, common sense. Jez, says Louise, the one thing that we all know about is these Albanian criminals will be back here in a week on a bleeding boat. Claire's in Swansea. That's brave. Starmer's policies are mirror images of Biden's policies. Open border hopes to get the migrants to be able to vote. High taxes, totally woke crap agenda, and bumbles and mumbles when he gets caught in a lie and is hardly ever seen. Although he did... By the way, nobody's mentioned this. Is Prince Charles becoming political, or King Charles? What the hell was he doing in Cornwall with the Prime Minister yesterday? And by the way, did you see the pictures of Angela Rayner's shoes? Dreadful. Anyway, here we go. I thought this would be a slightly different. I mean, we have a presenter on this station who does drive rather well. On what day does she do it? Is it Thursday or Friday? Great, nobody knows. Ladies and gentlemen, let me big her up. This is slightly embarrassing for me. Reasons will be let out in a minute. Alex Phillips in a green dress, good afternoon.
Hello, gorgeous. How are you? Thursday, so I'll be in your well-kept warm seat on Thursday this week.
I've gone red again. I can't tell them why I go red every time I speak to you now.
You can't help but think about it, can you?
No. Anyway, there we go. If you do want to, we're going to have a chat. I see it. Look, honestly, the aircon's on. I've got all sweaty again, Alex. 0344 499 1000. Let's just talk before we get into the madness of you can save yourself in this country because of chicken nuggets. Breaking news in the last half an hour. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu saying if Hamas, and I think the language here is really important, mate, if Hamas does not return hostages by noon on Saturday. The ceasefire will end. Military will return to intense fighting. Hamas this time yesterday said, we're not releasing any more. It's been broken. Trump overnight said all hostages by midday on Saturday. All hell will break loose. He didn't sound like that. He's left himself a bit of room for manoeuvre, hasn't he, Netanyahu? It does not return hostages by noon on Saturday. Tell me more.
Yeah, Netanyahu. You're going to have to learn to say that one, aren't you?
Don't start. I'll get embarrassed.
Yeah, good. I actually think that we need to take a firm hand. I don't know what this appeasement is constantly with terrorist organisations who committed acts of brutality on the October the 7th with the last release of those male hostages. And remember, those men who came out of confinement have had their entire families slaughtered by and large, their wives, their children. They've come out of confinement and they have reported of being held upside down by their ankles, of being starved, of being brutally treated. Now, taking hostages is part of war, but believe it or not, there is law that governs war, and that is breaking international criminal law. And yet, time and again, the people who are dragged in front of the UN and told off with an angry shake of a finger is Israel. You cannot negotiate with terrorists. And I think actually this sort of more strong-arming of saying every hostage, unless you're going to be car parked, should have happened a long time ago. The sad, tragic, awful, desperate problem with all of this are the innocent civilians who are caught in the middle. So whether or not, if there's going to be brutal action, whether or not there is some sort of effort to get people to safety, which Israel, frankly, has been extremely good at doing before, trying to treat the Gaza Strip with surgical precision when it comes to targeting terrorists. You wouldn't believe that was the case if you listened to all the weirdos with their placards every Saturday marching through London. But when you look at the ratio of wartime casualties compared to fighters, actually the ratio is not terrible in Gaza. There are always going to be horrible, innocent civilian deaths in war. But I think that this needs to happen. There needs to be greater threats leveled against Hamas, because like you were saying, whenever there are 3 hostages released, a little dribble of people who have been treated abominably, Israel's being forced to release hundreds of hardened terrorists.
Murderers.
People who have taken weapons or explosive devices into their territory. So we got to get real. And I'm glad that Trump has waded into this and said, right, these are the conditions. Benjamin Netanyahu has repeated those conditions. Hamas are not going to play ball yet, but let's see what else is up the sleeve of the now newly combined forces of America and Israel. Because remember, under the Biden regime, they were silent. America didn't really get themselves involved, and now they've got America back playing, you know, in this kind of cynical kind of a game. But you know, now America re-entered the theatre of war, so to speak. Things could change. So let's see if Hamas do stick to their intransigence.
Marvellous, very professional. It's lovely to see you in green. Now listen, just wind back your neck a second and listen to this. So I came in today, and I do think to myself sometimes, I'm going to come in, it's going to be a nice day. There isn't going to be something to moan and bitch about. But no, we're at it again. This morning, the new leader of the Tory party, and please just keep me on double screen when I do this, who frankly hasn't announced hardly anything. She released a new book. I don't know if you've seen this. This is highlights of my first 100 days. There's absolutely stuff all in it. Anyway, she opened her gob this morning, bade not, to say that a deal with Farage and Reform is for the birds. Now, before you jump in, all I have heard in the last sort of few days is Tories arguing on WhatsApps and Tories saying, maybe we should, maybe we shouldn't. Nothing from Reform. They're just getting on talking about policies and how actually they'd like to form a government. What's central to this whole thing is that she says, and this is absolutely brilliant, I believe the British people, well, she didn't say it like that because that would sound like Churchill, but she thinks that the British people are going to get hacked off with the Labour government, that they will eventually turn, as they've done forever, from the Tories to Labour and Labour to Tories. Is it not absolutely true to say that she is the epitome of what is wrong with traditional, actually politicians on both sides? They see Reform as some sort of temporary sort of protest organisation, and they're not taking a party that has a very, very serious opportunity of forming the next government seriously and to their own chagrin. I honestly believe they think that Reform will disappear. And I don't personally, I think you'll agree with me, is that's not going to happen, is it? Not in a million.
It's not going to happen. But what I would say is someone who was head of media for UKIP, who was elected to the Brexit Party.
Wait, you never told me that. I didn't know that.
If only you had been an MEP with me in Brussels, the fun we would have had. One thing I would say is the Conservative Party play dirty. And between now and the next election, there will be all sorts of horrible tricks. They are not unfamiliar with blackmail. They're not unfamiliar with threats. They're not unfamiliar with digging around, trying to find out sordid details, publishing things behind the scenes, going after councillors and saying, well, if you do this, we're going to do that. They work with either favour or threat, essentially, the Conservative Party. They have a mass operation. That's a legacy party. They're able to do this nationally to donors, to local councillors, to would-be candidates. They've done it before. And I already know they've established their Reform UK attack unit and are already coming up with their strategies and their blackmail and their dirty tricks. And I think if Nigel Farage is savvy right now, he will talk about this a lot more. He will expose it to fend off the threat, so to speak, to spike it. So when people hear all the stuff that may or may not come out, I think it will in time. And also what you'll notice, actually, by and large, when it comes to a general election, is the Labour Party and the Conservative Party will team up over this because takes votes from both of them. The needle may well move because, of course, the legacy media, like the legacy parties, will just jump on the bandwagon. You know, someone turns around and goes, oh, look, this Reform candidate put on Facebook in 2001 something about not liking rainbow flags. Party of homophobes. They shout and repeat it.
I think Reform needs to be more vocal about the new health minister who says that it's OK to identify as a llama, for Christ's sake. That was fun yesterday. What the hell's that all about?
That's what the left wing are. They haven't woken up and realised that actually woke is dead. There's a sort of new woke now. The new woke is that there is no woke. And they haven't really got with the programme. But the thing is, and this is the same that's happened across Europe, populist parties have massively gained in traction, but what the establishment will do to try and block them is go to absolute extremes. And we, like I said, we're far away from a general election. In France, they call it a snap election. We've got every single other party, including mental, extreme leftist parties who are anti-Semitic, who want sort of extreme socialism, like USSR level socialism on steroids. Oh, they're fine. They're palatable. They'll get all of them together in a coalition to block the populists. And I wouldn't be surprised if similar tricks are used going into the next general election if Reform is still...
Maybe I'm wrong and naive. You probably know more, but I think the British people have reached a seminal moment. I think the British people will no longer accept being conned. I don't think they follow. I think that it's not scepticism. I think that they're more switched on, which is really weird because after the expenses scandal, I think a lot of people were switched off. They weren't voting. They didn't give a toss. Now, this is really important. Nigel Farage... Yesterday, I've only just got this story, and I bet you're ahead of me. So one of the things that is central to everybody's agenda, be it this station, be it Reform, is immigration. We're going to stop the boat, said Starmer. What's his face? What was his name? Sunak. He fell on his sword, or well, he fell on everybody else's sword because Rwanda was a disaster. Anyway, I'm going to stop the boats. Nothing's happened. Boats have continued. Migrants are pouring into the country. Nigel and Reform are talking about it. So yesterday, the beautiful message came from the Home Office, including some footage of a jet, that hundreds of people, 19 19,000, in fact, illegal migrants have been removed by this government since we took power. Nigel Farage overnight blasting this, saying this is feeble, this is not right, there's something wrong about this. And his gut instinct is right again, because have you heard about this in the Telegraph in the last hour at all? I'm sure you have. The deportation flight that you're seeing on screen right now, ladies and gentlemen, filmed by the Home Office, was in fact a private jet, flown to Albania, where it only took 47 illegal Albanian criminals. I'll underline criminals. By the way, I'd never give too much credit to the Tories, but the Tories did a deal with the Albanian government months and months ago. So what this was a flight that cost British taxpayers £1 million and is, in my mind, an attempt by our corrupt Prime Minister and his Home Secretary to try and, steal a march on reform or on the Tories, on whichever party says we're going to deal with immigration. That's our bloody money, £1 million, Alex Phillips.
Yeah. And you know, think of the optics, right? When Trump started those mass deportation flights over the incredible borders are Tom Homan. I love that guy. He is amazing. There were pictures released to the public of these men who are criminals being shackled together with chains around their ankles, frog marched onto a massive military aircraft. Do you know, why aren't we using an old Herc? Why are we getting some sort of private jet? And by and large, these aren't just going to be Albanians who have come here illegally. They don't have a visa.
They're criminals, mate. They're criminals.
Yeah. You look on the Organised Crime Index. I say this regularly when I'm on air. Google it if you haven't. Go on Organised Crime Index and comes up this heat map of the world. And you can go country by country and have a read of what goes on in each country. And all this data is provided by the CIA, by Europol, by Interpol. This is official statistics. When you read the review of the UK, about 90% of the criminal underworld has now been consolidated by Albanian gangs.
Yep.
Right? You've got drug trafficking, people trafficking. We need to talk about the trafficking of women. A lot of Ukrainian girls and women who were escaping Ukraine after the initial wave of Russian invasion were picked up by Albanian gangs to be taken to brothels around Europe and forced into pornography. Again, a disgusting crime. So when these people are being put on a private jet and sent home, know who and what they are. They might not have tattoos all over their faces, like the Mexican or El Salvador cartels, but these are hardened, nasty, murderous, evil men. So they should be chained together and frog marched onto a massive military aircraft. And as far as I'm concerned, open up the bomb deck and just drop them from, 30,000 feet.
Oh my God, you're as good live as you were in Madrid. Anyway, listen, what can I say? You're on you on tomorrow?
I'm on Thursday. Well, you're on tomorrow, aren't you, you numbskull?
What is wrong with me? I can't. Do you know what started to happen? I mean, this is. I don't mean to talk about like being 60, but I've started starting sentences and forgetting bloody well halfway through what I'm saying.
Great in this profession.
Do you think the end is nigh for me?
Well, if it is, I'll take the rest of your shift. So
is that what you want? So basically, what you're doing is you're undermining me, so that in the end, in a sort of in a mess of like I don't know what I'm doing, I just retire and you get the whole thing, yeah?
Yeah, the throne will be mine.
What is that on the wall behind you, my darling? What is that?
Yeah, that's a skull. It's an olive root.
It looks like somebody has had a massive poo on your wall. I don't mean
to be... But it's actually just an organic tree root, which is all beautifully shaped, a bit of olive.
Good. Well, you go and sit cross-legged and chant. She's on Thursday. The legend is Alex Phillips. Thank you, my darling. She was live on Drive, 20 minutes to 6 o'clock. What do you want to talk about? Reform, the Tories, 19,000 illegal migrants. Well, 47 of them flown at a cost of £1 million to you. It's all on this show, and it's your show. It's 0344 499 1000. Text to 87222. We're coming back in 3 because I'm off for a week.
Across the UK. On DAB+. On YouTube. On your mobile. And on your side. This is Talk.
I was just putting my shoes off. 0344 419 1000. Text to 87222. Hello, Jez from Ivor. The new girl appointed by Starmer said it's OK to say you're a llama. When he put her in her place, she spat in his face and everyone laughed at the karma. Yes! This is the news yesterday, that he had to get rid of his health minister, Andrew Gwynn, who took part, this is Starmer, in that WhatsApp group that was very disrespectful, anti-Semitic, sexist, misogynistic, homophobic, all the things the Labour Party convinced everybody else is. And he replaced her with Ashley Dalton, who is the new health minister, who actually in the past has tweeted that people can identify as llamas. There should be same-sex toilets. And this is, I'm going to do it again, Ivor. The new girl appointed by Starmer said it's OK to say you're a llama. When he put her in place, she spat in his face and everyone laughed at the karma. Voice notes are in, loads of them. Let's start with David on the Home Office immigration numbers. Go.
Good afternoon, Jeremy, or should I say good evening, Jeremy. Good show so far, mate. Reference these hopeless Home Office and all these people sitting on their backsides doing nothing. Send them out doing the job, portering, delivery drivers, whatever. But you've got to understand, it all boils down to, at the end of the day, votes.
Couldn't agree more. Thank you, David. Adam on Reform and the Conservative deal. Go.
Jez, just a quick one. If Reform make a deal with Conservatives, Reform will lose my vote. But I don't think they're going to, Jez. We can all see, I believe they're going to win with a landslide. I really do believe Farage has got his hand right on the button. Great show, Jez.
I'll tell you something I didn't say to Isabel that I meant to say as well, just bearing in mind what Adam just said from a Reform point of view. I would also say that Reform doesn't need to just take washed-up Tory MPs who have failed and want to see a lifeline. There's plenty of blood out there, I think, new blood, that could do a good job. Joe, voice note on the Albanian 1 million private jet flight. Go.
Hi, Jezza. Can you believe £1 million to send them back? I've just checked on Google. You can drive there in just over a day. Can't they surely hire a coach and just send them back? Wouldn't cost more than £5,000, surely.
No, because what they wanted to do, Joe, was, in my humble opinion, I could be wrong, is create an optic that looked exactly like the American one, minus the chains, and it's blown up in their faces. Let's go to Bournemouth. Very nice place to live, Bournemouth, by the sea. Josephine, how are you?
Hello. Thanks.
Have you got a sense of humour?
Well, up to a point.
Not tonight, Josephine. See what I did there?
I just wanted to say that the foreign people who have come to work with a work permit,
yes,
I think we ought to keep a track on everybody. And even if it's decades, if they are not working, then we're very sorry, but we've run out of money and you must go back to your country and reapply. I would take a very, very firm line.
I think the problem is, and I don't think anybody would disagree with you, Josephine, I think that I can't put into words, I've said this many times before, I find it astonishing that a country that is supposed to be as successful and as switched on as the United Kingdom seems to allow people to come here who throw their details in the sea, who disappear into society, who manage to somehow earn a living, but actually don't seem to have records. They seem to be able to get benefits and pay no tax. And
then we keep records.
And I don't understand.
And we chase it up.
I know. I mean, we hear about this huge civil service that seems more intent, in my mind, on following up its own agenda rather than policing, excuse the pun, the very things that are needed. You see, in this country, public services are on their knees, right?
Yes, yes.
And trying to explain to... I mean, I had an argument with a lefty on Saturday. That was fun. And they were going, well, you know, these poor people are coming from war-torn countries and, of course, they need to see a doctor. I'm going... Well, France isn't a war-torn country. And by the way, if you're 70 years of age in Bury, your husband's passed and you can't see anybody about the pain in your entire body because there's 7 million people waiting for a doctor's appointment, how the hell are you supposed to feel when somebody come into this country and see somebody straight away?
That's the trouble. You know, these poor people have come, oh dear, they've had such a... No, we're having the hard time. We need now to start taking a very hard line.
Do you think that will happen? What do you make of Reform? Do you think they're a considered option or not?
I joined Reform nearly 2 years ago.
Sorry, what did you say, Josephine?
I joined Reform nearly 2 years ago.
And do you think, I mean, today we've had this thing where Cammy Bednock's going, I'm not doing a deal with Reform.
Rubbish.
Oh. Does Reform need to do a deal with the Tories?
No, absolutely not.
And what do you make of them? Do you think they have a viable opportunity to be the next government?
Absolutely.
Do you? We love you. Well, can I say not tonight? Never mind. Thank you very much indeed, Josephine. You're very kind to Essex. Ben, you've got 2 minutes. You're on Talk Drive. What you got?
Jeremy, how you doing?
Not bad.
Yeah, good. Yeah, just this is what you're saying about the Tories and Reform and all of this. And I think that one thing that's really important is that the Reform voters have to go out and vote. The public have to vote, because I think there's this conception where people think, oh, do you know what, there's no point, or, you know, they're going to get it anyway, so there's no point voting. And I think that happened a little bit in America with the manipulation of the exit polls and all this sort of stuff.
I think with any political party, the challenge is always to be able to say to its voting core, look, you need to come out and you need to vote. There's a long time to go before the next general election, but I sit here February 2025 thinking that all I'm hearing is noises from the Tories about, you know, we're not prepared to do a deal, or we might want to do a deal. You haven't heard that from Reform. Reform are talking about changes, about policies, about legislation. Yeah, sure, it might not happen, but I don't believe that Reform is going away, and that is a very important point. Ben, in Essex, thank you very much indeed. Jodie, twice the show, so no. This is Talk Drive.
Keir Starmer refers to people like me and you as far right because we challenge immigration, or we want prison to be harsh, or we want villains locked up. They see the world through that view. There's hardly any senior officers who are ex-armed forces anymore. There used to be about 50% of the senior officers. And so what you have is this liberal elite who believe in everything that you see on the net zero, mass immigration, liberal views on the punishment of criminals. They belong to that same club.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back, 8 minutes to 6. Push the button, Ames.
Sport Summary. on tour.
A very good afternoon to the legend that is Sam Allard. And Sam, we were lambasted when we went off air yesterday for failing by talking football for 8 minutes and not talking about rugby union. England, of course, a fantastic victory at the weekend at Twickenham over France. And breaking rugby union news, which we'll start with today, Warren Gatland has left his role as the Wales head coach in the middle of the Six Nations after a record 14 consecutive defeats. Means that he wasn't very good at his job.
Yeah, I mean, no real surprise, Jez. They obviously started off the Six Nations with back-to-back defeats and 2 heavy defeats. You mentioned there the key number was 14 defeats in a row is pretty unprecedented and pretty remarkable. So, yeah, Warren Gatland has left his role as the world's head coach. Obviously, midway through the Six Nations campaign, he was contracted until the World Cup, which is in 2027. But by mutual consent, he's left. They've still got Ireland to face, Scotland, and then they finish at home against England on the 15th of March. They want to appoint a permanent successor before the summer tour to Japan, with all options open. So Warren Gatland, Wales legend, no longer in charge. And of course, yeah, for England, you mentioned it, I know we didn't get touched yesterday, Jez, but an absolutely remarkable victory over the weekend against a French team that many people thought were going to come to Twickenham and sort of, steamroll us. But a last-minute try to win 26-25. And Steve Baldwick himself has been under a little bit of pressure. It's been a pretty tricky 18 months for England. But that victory against France at Twickenham, especially the manner, is pretty incredible.
A couple of things I want to say. You sound like you got a cold. You got the same top on as yesterday. You sulking a bit? You all right?
I'm not sulking, but I do have a little bit of a cough and a cold, yeah.
Wuss. I did my homework in an air raid shelter.
No, sorry. Don't call me a wuss. I wasn't going to... if I started off by going, oh, yeah, I'm feeling under the weather...
I'm going to sit there with my shoulders up and my head in my hoodie fixed for...
No.
Get a grip, man.
No, sorry. If anything, I'm sat here, I'm working all week, I'm ready to go, I'm prepared. So I'm not a wuss. I wasn't even coughing.
I'm joking. Warren Gatland, it may be living proof, and you're going to turn this right on me. Maybe going back is never the answer sometimes. Warren Gatland had an amazing time with Wales. He was the British Lions coach and did a fantastic job. Leaves. I would say this about England. I think the talent in England is extraordinary. I'm not sure that Borthwick is anything more than a 6-foot Eddie Jones. And I don't mean to be disrespectful. They were handed that victory. Yes, they grabbed it. France, I've never seen France drop more ball and make more mistakes. But fair's play. England had lost 3 or 4 games in the last 5 minutes from winning position. So great news. I hope that's all right for the rugby, man. Let's move on to football. Real Madrid, Manchester City, Champions League knockout match tonight. Is it 2 legs or 1?
Yes, 2. 2 legs.
Carlo Ancelotti, that always sounds like my favourite pasta, he says that whoever wins this game will win the Champions League. Manchester City won't win the Champions League. They can't even beat Leicester.
No, so I think Real Madrid will win this game, and therefore Real Madrid will probably go on and win the Champions League. That's how this is going to work. I mean, this is quite remarkable. I don't think anybody thought that Man City, Real Madrid weren't going to finish in the top 8, which would have you automatically through to the last 16. So the fact this match even takes place in this stage is pretty remarkable. It's the 4th consecutive season they've met in the Champions League. And look, Real Madrid, whilst they might be struggling in the Champions League, they're still top of the Liga. And look, Jez, we all know Man City are a team. Their legs have gone. They're struggling. Over 2 legs to stop this Real Madrid team, who just know how to win in the Champions League. It's going to be a tough ask, isn't it? New signings or not, it's really hard to see past Real Madrid.
I never thought I'd describe Man City as a one-man team, but without Rodri, they look nothing. Sir Alex Ferguson, Gary Neville joined past and present Man United stars this afternoon to pay homage to one of the greatest footballers, I think, ever. Manchester Cathedral morning, Dennis Law this afternoon.
Yeah, we had Natalie Pike there for talkSPORT. Obviously, a really emotional day. Somebody, Manchester United legend who sadly passed away. So yeah, the great and the good were there to pay their respects. And if you just go online and look at some of the videos, I mean, the amount, Jeremy, of Manchester United legend, big names that are there to pay respects, doesn't just show sort of, what he was like as a footballer, but sort of as a person as well.
Incredible. I still can't get over the fact that I don't know if you saw that funeral of Kath, the woman who was at the reception in Manchester United for 57 years. No disrespect to Dennis Law, no disrespect to Bobby Charlton. The turnout for her funeral smacked amazing
Yeah,
family
she
club. I mean,
been in that
everybody.
football club
Beckham
for
flew
many-
in. Yeah,
And
incredible.
for many, many years, she'd been in that football club, though, Kath, and she's the first person that you see when you walk in and stuff. So, yeah, obviously, Kath passed away, it was a couple of months ago now. But, yeah, she was sort of the face of the... I know we can't see her face, but for many people going into work every day, the absolute face of that football club.
England-India tomorrow, third one-day international. Brendan McCullum takes over the white ball team. But, you know, let's be honest, there's been no change at all in their fortunes. We were dominant. Champions Trophy round the corner. We haven't got a chance. We're 2-0 down already. What's the matter with us?
Yeah, I mean, we've lost 5 out of 6 games since Brendan McCullum has come in. Look, don't get me wrong, we're playing a top team, aren't we? You know, India and Indian conditions are so good, so strong. But this just looks an England team that are looking a little bit unbalanced. I don't think they've got the right combinations. Too many big-name players are out of form. I look at someone like a Liam Livingstone, who's been in that team for years now and probably isn't justifying a place. So, yeah, we got the Champions Trophy, which starts next week, and these have kind of been warm-up games, preparations. It's kind of, you know, new head coach, same problems. An England team that aren't firing on all cylinders. 5 defeats in 6 with 2 down in the ODI series, and it's a hard slog, Jess, for England at the moment.
I think that the mistake they've made, and far be it from me to tell Brendan McCullum how to coach a cricket team, is there's been this obsession with having 11 players that can bat and bowl. He's just gone back to Joe Root. You can play 5 really good batters and 3 really good bowlers and a couple of all-rounders. That would be my analogy, but I could be wrong. Now, I'm worried about you. Are you going to go to... Oh, no, you can't get a doctor's appointment because you're not an illegal migrant. How are you going to get better?
I'm going to get on with life. I'm going to be a man. I'm going to go and have a cold shower. Going to make some dinner, and then I'm going to watch the football tonight. Man City, Real Madrid. I can't wait for it.
And what about Friday? Are you sending any Valentine's cards? I don't want to upset you this time of year, but how's Friday looking for you, Sam?
Lonely.
Have you got any cards yet through the post?
No, I haven't got any cards. No, I think Valentine's Day is overrated. I think it's
well, it is if you're single, yeah.
Yeah, and even if you've got a relationship, you know, let's go out and do something nice on Valentine's Day.
No, I've ordered roses and cards and sexy. Anyway, honestly, I've got it all sorted. Me.
Honestly, your partner is a lucky lady, isn't she? I mean, honestly.
Wife. Or as my father used to call my mother, the War Office. Sam, lovely to have you on, my friend. Thank you for that. We did rugby, we did cricket, we did football, we did everything, because he's a legend. Sam Ellard, back tomorrow at about 10 to 6 to spout brilliance in the sporting world. It's almost 6 o'clock. We have the Deputy Leader of Reform UK, the MP for Boston and Skegness, Richard Tice, in the next hour on Drive Time and Talk, the home of free speech and common sense. And if you want to be part of the show, you know what to do. 0344 499 1000 is the telephone number you need. Text 87222 and the news.
Across the UK. On DAB+. On YouTube. On your mobile. And on your side. This is Talk.
Back hour 3 of Drive for Tuesday. We're live across the UK. Thanks for tuning in. Talk, of course, is the home of free speech and common sense. Your chance as ever to be part of the debate. 0344 499 1000. Text to 87222. Margaret, these immigrants being deported by £1 million plane are probably being sent on a free holiday courtesy of the bloody Labour Party. Brittany says, people from the Caribbean want to complain about being too hot. Well, newsflash, there are elderly people freezing from the cold weather in the United Kingdom. Absolutely. Chris says 1.5 million migrants will take 60 years to clear if you follow this government's pathetic approach. Dennis in Manchester. Whilst I agree the Tories are in deep trouble and the pact is unlikely, my fear is that the lack of a pact splits the right and lets Labour in by the back door. Don't know what you think. Well, I'll tell you somebody who can answer that. Deputy Leader of Reform, MP for Boston and Skednest. We say a very good afternoon to the legend that is Richard Tice. How are you, Richard?
Very good afternoon. We're alive and well, despite all the madness going on in the world.
I don't know where to start. I'm going to start slightly differently. Actually, I'm not going to. I'm going to start by giving you a lovely present I received today. This is highlights from my first 100 days by Kemi Badenoch. I don't know if you've seen this. And inside, Richard, it's really interesting because there's absolutely bugger all written because she's achieved absolutely nothing. And that's perfect for a long holiday and a real page-turner. Reform UK. So there you are. That was a lovely little thing. Nate, on a serious note, and I'd love somebody who's high up in the party to tell the viewers and listeners. There seems to have been a lot said recently about the only way to stop the left is for Reform and the Tories. Hear me out. Very little from Reform, in fact, nothing, but loads from the Tories, culminating in Badenoch today saying, a deal with Farage is for the birds. Now, I would respect anybody if they came out and spoke the truth, but what I believe she is mistakenly still thinking is that they are so up themselves, the Tory party, that they think that if we just have a couple more years of this nightmare Labour government, the good old British people will go, yeah, time for the other side, let's get the Tories back in, we've forgiven and forgotten. But the truth is it not? The British people show no signs of forgiving and forgetting, and in fact, they need to be very careful, these other politicians, if they make the mistake of just assuming that Reform is a passing ship in the night, because facts and figures would say that your party's here to stay, Richard Tice.
We're very much here to stay, and there was another YouGov poll out in the last 24 hours that put us for the second week running, I think, in first place. I think the Tories were sort of 5% behind us. And what actually is happening is that competition's a good thing. We've got momentum, and we're going up in the polls, and the Tories are slipping in the polls. And that's because, as you say, first of all, people won't forgive or forget the damage that the Tories did to our country with mass immigration, with not doing Brexit properly, with raising taxes, raising grotesque, wasteful government spending like the £100 million backshed. And then, I'm serious, yes, I'll come back to that if you want to, but it might get rude. And then they're saying that our policies, actually the common sense policies that can make people better off, that can get rid of the daft lunacy of net stupid zero. The only net zero we want is net zero immigration. And people trust us because actually we've got a track record of achieving and doing things.
Do they trust you, or is it really, and I'm not being disrespectful in any way, hear me out, because I haven't started the question the right way. Is there finally in this country, we've argued, many people have argued for many years that this two-party system does nobody any favours because it's up and down and up and down, and anything that gets created gets taken back. You only have to look at Trump. On day one, reversing everything that Biden did on day one, who'd reversed everything that he did on day one. What I'm saying is, I suspect that Reform is also benefiting from an apathy or just a general frustration amongst the British people, which is that very thing, up and down and up and down. There might only be 5 Reform MPs. It might be a new party. There might be defections from other parties. There might be work to be done. But I get the feeling the British people are saying, what could be worse? Why not give these people a chance to prove that they could do a better job? That's the feeling you get if you sit here every day.
Well, it couldn't be worse than people getting poorer year after year, the quality of public services getting poorer, our energy bills going ever higher. And I think quite rightly, people are saying, actually, these people, thank heavens they present a a real alternative option. And that's good for more debate, more discussion, as I said before. And actually, you don't have to like someone to do business with them.
No.
And in the same way, many people voted for Donald Trump who may not have liked him as an individual personality, but they did rightly conclude he'd make the world a safer place and he'd make people better off.
Dennis in Manchester says that much as he's listened to Nigel Farage say, you know, we were let down by the Tories, by Boris Johnson in 2019 after our support. You've made the same point as well. Dennis in Manchester is saying, in his mind, he's a Reform voter, but he doesn't believe that there is a way to stop a second 5-year term for Starmer and his friends unless the right somehow amalgamates. Your response to that, Richard?
Well, look, what will happen over the next few years is that I think we will keep going up in the polls. I think, sadly, the country's in for a difficult economic time. I think Labour will slip in the polls. And I think people will rapidly realise if you want to stop Labour, when the Tories in some polls now are slipping below 20%, actually, a Tory vote is a wasted vote. A Tory vote becomes the vote that splits the non-Labour vote. And people will say, well, I need to place my vote in order to make sure in my constituency I get Labour out. It's the reverse of what happened at the last election last July, where so many people voted on the basis of who's going to get the Tories out. Never underestimate the good common sense of the British voter.
Yeah.
And so I think and people are getting sort of very excised about this. Regrettably, there is still a long way to go, give or take 4 years. And all sorts of interesting things will happen. But a lot of this story over the weekend, frankly, was made up twaddle and nonsense. We put out a press statement dismissing it as such. I think the Mail on Sunday was either trying to fill some pages or they'd had a bit of a love-in with Boris. I don't know. Frankly, I don't care. Look, it's irrelevant. We're just going to focus on doing what we do well. There will be more news out in the next couple of days, which I think people will find very interesting with regard to net stupid zero. And we'll just push on and we'll just keep telling it as it is. And people say, wow, these people are deadly serious.
So you wouldn't take Boris Johnson at all?
Definitely not. Absolutely not.
This story came out whilst we were on air. Please take a deep breath. I'm sure you know about it, and I'll tell from your eyes and the way you look down if you don't. And we've heard over the last 24 hours stories that, you know, I don't think we should laugh at. I think it's an embarrassment to this country if we can say to, you know, to some man who's committed a heinous crime, it's OK, we'll pay for you to find a lawyer and we'll get him to use some ridiculous law in front of a judge, and you can actually stay in this country because your son doesn't like chicken nuggets from Albania. Today we discover a Pakistani paedophile escaped deportation, Richard Tice, because it would harm his children's psychological impact. Let's forget the children he's raped, yeah? An illegal migrant today staying in the country because she claimed that her husband would be too hot going to the Caribbean. You're a pensioner listening to that who's freezing in their goddamn house and you cannot afford to heat your thing. And you look at that, and is it any wonder the British people are going, what? On the basis of that, though, this is what I want to put to you. We've talked, haven't we, about immigration. He said, I'll stop the boats. The Conservatives wanted Rwanda. We'll hear more from Reform's ideas in the months ahead. From nowhere, yesterday, we had footage of this government, according to their, the Home Office, removing 19,000 illegals since they came to power. Suddenly we've got pictures of a jet, and there's a tunnel, and there's people handcuffed being led up the steps and everything. And then have you heard the news in the last hour or not? I'm sure you have. The deportation flight that was filmed by the Home Office was a private jet that went to an Albanian airport. It cost £1 million, and it only took 47 Albanians. By the way, that deal, I'm not complimenting Sunak, but we remember the optics, him against the very tall man. That was an Albanian agreement. 47 Albanians, convicted criminals, on their way home on a private jet that takes 220 people. Do you know how much that costs the British taxpayer, Richard Tice? £1 million, £22,000 per deportee. And you wonder why this country wants change. Mate, that's ludicrous.
Hey, you and I are in the wrong business. I think you and I, we should go into the charter aviation business and start chartering aircraft.
I've got a mate who's
we'd make some good money.
I've got a mate who's got a business that deals with car parts. We should get a couple of jets. Honestly, though, how bad does that look to people who are struggling?
Do you know, I'm going to take the optimistic line that actually 47 criminal migrants from Albania. I'm glad they're now in Albania rather than in the United Kingdom. So let's view that as an optimistic scenario. What I really want to know, though, is the pace of future deportations. And we should be told where these people are taking, in the same way that when people are arrested for crimes, we should be told the nationality of foreign criminal offenders, so we can see which countries actually have people coming here who've got a slightly dodgy record. What are the percentage of wrong-uns? So we can draw our own conclusions about a sensible, smart immigration policy.
I would never compliment Sunak, but he did do a deal with the Albanians because there was some research, I guess it would be a couple of years ago now, I think we might have talked about this, and something like 12,000, a real high percentage of male convicted criminals in our prisons were Albanians. So they did the deal and that started to happen, which always begged the question to me, why didn't the Tory government, why doesn't this government make it their aim to make more deals with countries so we can move these people out? Don't get it.
Well, Jeremy, it was my good self that actually broke the story about 4 in 10 of the migrants coming across the Channel in 2023, I think it was, were Albanians. That was the first time anybody had mentioned that, a member of NATO, by the way.
Yeah.
And therefore the Tories then started to admit that actually there was a problem with Albanian drug dealers and criminals and gangs and modern-day slave traders. So Mr. Sunak doing a deal with Albania was thanks to me, thanks to a whistleblower that came to me with the information. Look, but we just need much more transparency. And I wish the Home Office and this government well in deporting all foreign criminals.
But that,
frankly,
you would agree with me. That's a PR job, Richard. That's just trying to con us. And I'm not into conspiracy theories, but £1 million for a jet to fly home 40... I've got people up in arms saying to me now, why can't they go on a coach? Why can't they go back on a boat? Why can't they go on a Ryanair? Not being just Michael O'Leary. Why can't they go on a budget airline? Why do they have to be flown home in a private jet when old people can't see a doctor? It's not right.
I'll tell you why. Because the last time they tried to do it with 2 or 3 of them on jets with paying passengers, the paying passengers basically created a semi-riot and prevented the plane from taking off until the deportees were being taken off. So I don't think there's an alternative to that, to be absolutely honest. Good point about the coach, but
cargo plane, cheap plane, stand all the way.
I just take the view, I'd rather they were gone. Yeah. I'd rather a lot more were gone. I'd rather 10,000 were gone from foreign criminals from our prisons. I keep asking the Justice Secretary when that will happen, and she keeps sort of basically evading the question. No surprise there. We just want these people gone. And the sooner they're gone, the sooner the bills come down, the sooner space is free up in our prisons to fill in with other wrong-uns that at the moment can't be put in jail. And so it goes on. But actually, in all seriousness, we just need action. And if this government's getting the message, if they're scared witless of the rise of reform, well, that's good. That shows we're already having an impact on policy and implementation. Good. That's what we're here for.
No, I agree. Now, you talk about action, and I've had so many today, and I'm so glad that you're on, because loads of people have asked me to ask you this, and it, to me, again, it's pretty central to what we talk about most days on this station and on this show. Anybody really of any political persuasion has come round to the belief that the Blob, the bloated civil service, seemingly has untold power in the political corridors of this country. I mean, I've told the story before about how, whether you're a Rwanda fan or not, we were paying our civil servants salaries from our tax, and then they were using more tax money to go to court to sue a democratically elected government because they didn't like a policy. Astonishing and astounding. Many people saying to me, if Nigel Farage walked up 10 Downing Street in 4 years' time with you by his side, Donald Trump has, on day one, done the things that might be unpopular but that he was voted for. Would reform, thinking about what happened to Liz Truss, would you have the gonads, would you have the desire to get rid of so many members of this blob who, it seems to a lot of us, seem to control so much?
Well, the whole point about the failure of what Liz Truss was trying to do, she was rightly focused on growth, but she didn't focus on cutting the size of the state, cutting the size of wasteful, bloated government spending. And I said it then, I've been talking about it a lot recently. And literally, this civil service, via HS2, has just spent £100 million on a concrete tunnel to protect bats in a wood along HS2, 100 million quid of our cash. And the boss would do it again because he thinks it was the right thing to do. So So yes, we would dramatically, the first thing you've got to do is to cut wasteful spending in a really significant way so that people realise you're serious. And that requires, if you've got an electoral mandate, you have to say to the civil service folks, we've got the mandate, we're in charge, either get on with the job that you're instructed to do by us, the elected ministers, or in the nicest possible way, please go and get a job elsewhere before you're fired. Very simple, very clear, everybody knows where they stand. We cannot tolerate this ongoing nonsense. We have to reform the civil service, reform the way that relations operate between ministers and civil servants. Ministers have to be able to fire and hire the right people, and that should include lots of people from the private sector who view it as their civic duty to come across, get stuck in, kick some backsides and make some stuff happen. If not, Jeremy, this country is going bankrupt.
Completely agree. And one of the things that's obvious to anybody who actually follows this stuff is that, you know, Reform only has 5 MPs and there's plenty of people that say it's rough about the edges, but that's a bunch of people who have had business success. I'm just asking you, what if the system, I mean, you only have to see it already with Trump, that he's being threatened with stuff left, right and centre. What if the system kicks back against Reform? A new government is Reform. We're going to do something about the blob. Do you have the strength to go, I don't care what you throw at me, that's what I was elected for? That's what people want to know, I think.
And I think the simple answer is yes, we do have the strength. I don't think there's anybody stronger with a better track record, with more scars on our back, frankly, than us Reform MPs. And we would be elected on that mandate. It's as simple as that. And if you believe in democracy, then that's the whole point.
Yeah.
And sure, you know, some people are going to whinge and whine and get in their way. Do you know what? We're quite good at suing people. We're quite good at playing the legal game. I would respectfully suggest I'll employ better lawyers than a bunch of trade union members. If they want to take us on, bring it on, pal. We will take them on and we will win. It is as simple as that.
I know you're a very busy man. We've got a big Reform person on the phone. Are you all right to stay with me for 2 minutes, Richard Tice? Yes or no?
Yes.
John, new caller, Hertford. You threw to myself for Richard Tice. What are you going to say, pal?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, so I'm begging Richard, please don't do a deal with the Tories. I've been a Tory voter all my life, well, all my voting life, and betrayal is unforgivable. I mean, we gave them chance after chance. It's the boy that cried wolf. We can't believe them anymore. They're toxic. They're just a joke party. If you done a deal with them, you were Reform.
Oh, the line's gone, but I think what he was saying, Richard, was a Tory voter all his life, he's turned to Reform, and he would feel equally betrayed if Reform, trying to get in power or trying to shore up the right, did a deal with the Tories. I think a lot of people feel that strongly, Richard.
And he's quite right, and that's why we've been absolutely clear. We're not doing a deal with the Tories. We're just focusing on doing what we do well, growing our party, growing the branches, and we'll just keep pushing on. Look, it's really hard. No one's saying this stuff's easy.
No.
It shouldn't be easy. But we're just going to push on hard. And I think that people respect that. We've got council elections coming up. We could do, well, we're just going to do as well as we can and stand in as many places as we can. And then we're very excited about the elections next May 26 in Wales and Scotland. I think we're going to surprise a lot of people over the next 15 months.
And also, just before you go, obviously this is a serious point. You are allowed to smile. I think if you feel that you're not getting the response in the House of Commons, perhaps you should, in fact, all 5 of you at some point dress up as a llama, because we now have a health minister who thinks it's OK to identify as a llama. So honestly, mate, is it any wonder politicians that just come on and talk common sense are getting traction? The new health minister thinks it's all right to be, just to spit on people and I mean, it's ludicrous, Richard Tice.
Well, I don't know if you heard the question from my good friend, fellow MP Lee Anderson earlier in the House of Commons.
What did he say?
Get one of your team to dig it out and play it shortly. But in essence, he basically asked the Health Secretary this afternoon. He said, given that the new health minister thinks that you can present as a llama, he wanted some advice as to if a family member was ill overnight, should he call the doctor or should he call the vet or the man with the straitjacket?
And you see, Lee Anderson there is saying what every single person has said for the last 24 hours. Richard, you're a busy man. We really appreciate it. Richard Tice, thank you for coming on. Deputy to Reform UK and MP for Boston and Skegness on Talk Drive. 6:22, we're live across the UK. So many people. We'll do some texts, we'll do some messages. We've still got Jonathan Gullis, former Deputy Party Chair of the Tory Party. We've got Michael Graham, the American one, not the legend. I mean, I don't know. We're back in 3.
She's now been disciplined. She's gone to an employment tribunal. But astonishingly, at the tribunal yesterday, Dr. Beth Upton, the man, said that trans women have the right to get changed in front of female colleagues, insisted that he is biologically female, and said sex had no defined or agreed meaning in science. Actually said that. He said, I'm not a robot, so I'm biological, and my identity is female. Without wanting to appeal to the dictionary too much, I'm biologically female.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
25, Richard Tice there talking about how his colleague, Reform MP Lee Anderson, stood up this afternoon. And the Health Secretary, of course, is the boss of the Health Service in terms of the government. Number 2 is the Health Minister. Andrew Gwynn was sacked over the weekend for that disgusting messaging on WhatsApp. He was replaced by Ms Dalton, who's sort of into same-sex toilets and other things, including, she said, it would be fine for humans to identify as a llama. This was Lee Anderson in the House of Commons this afternoon.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Now, the new Health Minister has stated that it's OK for a human being to present as a llama. So what I want to know is if I have a family member who presents as a llama, suddenly becomes ill in the middle of the night, do they send for a doctor, a vet or a straitjacket?
Mr Speaker, I can just say to the honourable member that my honourable friend, the Minister for Public Health, believes in treating every human being with the dignity and respect they deserve, even the honourable gentleman.
Wow. 0344 499 1000, text to 87222. Great moment to bring in a former Conservative MP, talk presenter, former Deputy Chair, Jonathan Gullis. A very good afternoon, sir. How are you?
I'm good, Jeremy. How are you, buddy?
I'm all right, mate. Honestly, I don't know where to start. Let's start with the Health Minister. Yesterday, Ashley Dalton, same-sex toilets, and it's OK to identify as a llama, which presumably gives a green light for people to run around the House of Commons spitting on each other. I've no bloody idea, but honestly, in the wake of being quite fast in getting rid of Andrew Gwynn and that young kid from Burnley, fair play to Starmer on that, why would you give this person a job? It's just ludicrous.
Well, if you don't laugh, you'll cry, Jeremy. And I think Lee Anderson summed up the mood of the British public in hearing this story perfectly with his question. And I texted him actually saying it was superb. I thought it was. I don't know, Jeremy. Out of the 400 plus MPs they've got, they chose someone who literally believes, as you say, that trans women are women, which is nonsense. They believe that anyone can go into any toilet, however they're identifying on a given day. And now, if someone identifies as a llama, we should somehow take that seriously. I can't believe we've got 4 more years of this.
No, I'm 60 this year, and I say this every day on the show. I just crave for those days. You know, old-fashioned women, Jonathan. You know, the ones with wombs and not a penis. I mean, honestly,
Yeah.
It's becoming more outrageous by the day. Let's talk more specifically. I know what you're going to say on this, but I want to put them aside. Kemi Badenoch. By the way, I've got your present today. Have you seen this? This is Kemi Badenoch. It's highlights from my first 100 days. There's absolutely nothing on the inside of the book. Look at Gullis's face. Here's the thing. Kemi Badenoch has apparently been spending 3 months working out where the Tories went wrong. I could have told her, you lied. And what she needs to do in the future, whilst it would be fair to say Reform has really bought into the pulse of the British public and gone with it and been the vocal noise that the people have needed today. She finally sticks her head above the parapet and says that an electoral pact with Nigel Farage's Reform UK is for the birds. Now, we know that, and she knows, arguing that such a deal would alienate core Tory voters, not sure what core Tory voters are, but she says that she acknowledged that in WhatsApp groups, members of the Tory party don't know what to do about the threat that is Reform. I haven't heard anything from Reform about a pact. I've only heard it from the Tories. Would it be fair to say that rather explains and is justified by the position the Tory party finds itself in? Because momentum, and I hate that word because of Corbyn, is with Reform, isn't it, Jonathan Gullis? That's a fact.
Of course it's a fact, Jeremy, and the problem is we've got too many people in the Conservative Party who hope or expect or believe that somehow Reform will implode, and that's simply for the birds. They're going to have a great set of local elections this May. They'll have, as I think Richard said before the break, an even bigger set of results, I believe, next year. The Conservative Party have still got to go through people being angry and giving us a bloody nose. And I think Kemi, to be fair, has said that. There's 2 more years of anger still to come from the public towards us. And in that time, it's our job to go through legislation that we implemented and say what we'd rip up, also hold this government to account, and then come up with ideas and try to convince the people that we are going to deliver them if we're back in power. Now, I've said this before, and I get told off by some Conservatives when I say this, but I think it's true. We may do all the right things, but the public may still well have already made up their mind about us. But if we don't try, we'll never know the answer to that question. I don't believe we should be doing electoral pacts with Reform. And I say that not because I've got any grief against Reform. As you know, I agree. I think there's a cigarette paper between us when it comes to views on policies. And I like all the Reform MPs, and I know some of them very well. The truth of the matter is that if we stand down Conservatives in certain areas, that loses the Conservative cause, those Conservative members in those areas. That's never able. Well, that might take a generation to rebuild. Also, I think it treats the public a little bit with contempt. The idea that somehow the public will just lend their votes to one party or the other to get out of Labour. I think that actually, as we saw in the last elections, in the general election and the by-elections before that, even when you had Labour and Lib Dems on the ballot paper, the voters still knew how to tactically vote if they wanted to.
But all of that, the divided right. I mean, this is my point. I have only heard from your ex-colleagues. That's all we've heard, including your leader. Nobody from Reform is saying anything. They are leading at this moment, the last 2 or 3 opinion polls, the latest one this evening, proving the same point. If you're Nigel Farage's party, Jonathan Gullis, then you build 2% of a vote for the next 4 years, you're going to win an overall majority. But there is genuine belief in this country that they are speaking the language. And I'm going to ask you a question. We're mates, and I'm not trying to put you on the thing you can. Yeah. How long are you going to argue for a party that has lost the ear of the British people? You've just admitted on this show that your beliefs are probably a cigarette paper away from reform. You've admitted that people in your party have told you off for your views. Isn't Jonathan Gullis politically far better sat in reform?
I joined this party at the age of 18 years old. So I literally 17 years of my life, I've been a member of the Conservative Party. And I said, even when we were in government and we could see the writing was on the wall for us, as I said, in January 2023, I knew what was going to happen to me electorally, that after the election, I was going to fight for the heart and the soul of the Conservative Party and for Conservative principles and Conservative values. Now, look, maybe I lose that fight, and then maybe I have to make a decision in the future. Who knows? But I will continue to fight because I believe the Conservative Party, the oldest, most successful political party in history, with all that institutional knowledge about how, not just how to win elections on the ground, but also how to govern a country, I think is very important. And as you said, there are things that reform still have for me to answer questions on. For example, the ability to run a successful ground campaign, the types of policies. Yes, I know they got their contract with the people, but there's a lot of detail and substance still missing, I think, in that. And I will be intrigued to see over the next 2-3 years the policy platform that they develop. And I respect the fact that Rupert Lowe and others and Richard are working hard to do that. And that's where the Conservatives also have to do a lot of work in order to try and rebuild.
It doesn't feel, if you're a voter like me and you're away from it, it doesn't feel that any noise is emanating from the Tories. All the noise is emanating from reform. And I would take you up on one thing you said there. Yes, these people are new politicians, but all these other parties, it seems, the two-party system has worked. And I get the distinct feeling that a lot of British people are going, what is the risk? These people are successful businessmen. We've had years and years of up and down and up and down. I mean, we were promised by this lot, you know, grown-up government. Within 2 weeks, he was getting free glasses and free suits. And I mean, it's an absolute joke. And you're right, but I'm not trying to put you on a pedestal, but I do think I do think the Tories need to be really careful and not sit there and believe that the British public are going to swing back to them as they have done for the last 50 years. Because I don't think reform's going anywhere, JG, anywhere at all.
And Jeremy, what you've just said there is what I hope a lot of Conservative MPs will actually listen to, because when I speak to them, they fall into the trap of going, well, we've got 121 MPs, they're only 5 MPs, and they think that the antics in the chamber is somehow going to show up reform. Nigel Farage simply goes and does a social media video clip and gets 4 or 5 million views. I can tell you as an ex-MP, when you used to do a video of you in the chamber, you might get 1,000 views on your social media platform at best. So Nigel Farage and the Reform Party have figured out, as Donald Trump did, you don't need to spend time in the chamber all the time. Yes, you should be making arguments and cases for your constituents and for your views, but ultimately you can still make your case to the British public using new media, using...
What party had visible presence yesterday when the poor farmers of this country are about to be land grabbed by this socialist government, were driving their tractors in the rain? There was not a picture of a Tory MP. Dress me up and tell me whatever, but the truth of the matter is that was all reform. And you're exactly right. And if the Labour Party, if the Tory Party want to get people back, if it's at all possible, I'm with you. They need to be more vocal. Can I go on to the next thing? Because this is fantastic. It only came to pass whilst I was on air. Suddenly, from nowhere yesterday, the Labour Party announced that we've sent back 19,000 illegal migrants. We're doing a very, very good job. Here's some footage of a big plane, and there's a tunnel, and there's lots of people going up and down, and they're all going off. Turns out today, JG, have you seen the news? Have you heard this? I'm sure you have. The deportation flight, filmed by their own officials at the Home Office, was in fact a private jet that went to Albania with 47 Albanians, not the 220 that could have fitted on the plane. In fact, this plane takes 220. I'm going to compliment the Tories. They made a deal with Albania. 47 Albanian legal migrants were sent home last month on this flight. It's been picked up. It's a PR opportunity. And he's fallen on his arse again, Starmer, hasn't he? £1 million or £22,000 a head to deport 47 criminals who have broken the law. What's wrong with a bloody coach? What's wrong? It just doesn't make sense to me, Jonathan. British people have had it with this sort of story. Had it.
Well, as you say, Jeremy, first of all, it's good to see Labour using the Conservative deal that we made with Albania to deport illegal migrants and foreign national offenders. And look, like you are, I'm highly sceptical about this 19,000. Who are they? How long ago was it agreed they were going? Are they people who have arrived on small boat and come here illegally, or these people who have had a visa overstay, or are they foreign national offenders? Now, I'm pleased to see people being deported. That won't shock you, Jeremy, to hear that, as I've banged on about this time and time again. I will give credit that at least Labour are trying to show and communicate to the public, but it's going to take more than just one video to try and convince them. They're going to have to see dramatically those numbers coming down. The problem is they've got a bill going through the House of Commons right now that does the complete opposite, that says that if someone arrives here illegally, they will still have the right to be able to become a full and permanent citizen of the United Kingdom. They're saying they're going to lift the ban. They're no longer going to, do the testing for someone's age to check if they are an adult, as they allegedly claim. And so the deterrent, and obviously they've scrapped deportation to third safe countries such as Rwanda. So there's no deterrent now in the system. We're already accepting 66% of those who put in a bogus asylum claim because they've come from safe mainland France. So the problem is that Labour's basically going to do loads of approvals through the back door, deport a couple of foreign national offenders and claim the backlog is sorted. But actually, we'll just be saying to smugglers, send the people over, because as I say, they can now get a British passport at the end of it. And why the hell wouldn't they try? It's going to mean see death in the Channel unnecessarily, and that is on Labour's heads.
Finally, if we can talk very, very briefly, Trump taking the world by storm, offending as many people as possible, but doing actually what he said he would do to be elected. And that's what I think this country is crying out for, a politician who says, I don't care what you throw at me. I don't care what constraints are put in my way. This is what I believe, and this is what I was elected to do. Starmer and the US is interesting. Do you think this trade war will materialise, or do you think that Trump will bow down to the special relationship? Because I don't think he gives a toss. I think he quite rightly cares only about the American people.
Well, Jeremy, you know the country, you've met and been across it, right? Look at somewhere like Stoke-on-Trent. Tell me how globalisation and free trade has worked in the interest of the people of Stoke-on-Trent. Potteries industry decimated and jobs going for the... Even this week, factories closing because we have rocketing sky energy prices, because we're not prepared to drill in the North Sea and have our own oil refinery in this country. We've also got, obviously, now Rachel Reeves' job tax with the national insurance increase, which is killing the hospitality sector, that impacts the supply chains for ceramics, for example, as well. And so Trump is doing what's in the interest of his people. And I find it so ridiculous, the faux outrage of people. God forbid a president would stand up for the people he's been elected to serve. Look, there will be, I think, some impact with tariffs. I think Trump has to tread carefully here because, of course, if he does put up the cost, particularly of the aluminium and steel, the tariffs that are being talked about, that could have an inflationary impact. But at the same time, if he is unleashing the energy in his country market, that will drive down bills. If he is going to introduce major tax cuts, then that will counter any potential inflationary rise. And if he gets rid of wasteful government spend again, that's money that can be invested back in communities and back in people. So actually, I would suggest he's trying to find a way of balancing things. And I think we've now finally got Doge UK going with a couple of woke ways. I think Guido Fawkes is running it. And we should be looking at it. I mean, the fact that people were paying... Well, the government gave, 200 grand to some company to look at Star Wars and its impacts on the climate if it was real. I mean, geez Louise, give me strength. That's taxpayers' money.
Yeah, it is.
And by the way, in Rachel Reeves and her national insurance increase, Jeremy, in Stoke-on-Trent, our council hasn't had the full national insurance covered. They've got to find £1.5 million. That means out of the 5% tax rise local residents here are about to get, half of it's got to pay for the fact that Rachel Reeves is introducing a jobs tax. That means less money in roads, less money in parks, less money in our high street regeneration, more money being sent to the Treasury to be wasted in climate change aid overseas, or 500 million to overseas farmers, bizarrely, whilst robbing our own farmers, as you said, of our land, and taxing business and people to the absolute limit is an embarrassment and a joke. And I hope we find someone in the UK in the future, and I hope Kemi's that person, of course, as a Conservative, that she is willing to say, you know what, we're willing to do some uncomfortable things. And if that means ruffling some feathers in the EU and other trading partners, so be it, because it's time Britain was put first.
Still good to see you've got it, JG. Talk presenter will be back very soon. Jonathan Gullis on Talk Drive, back in 3.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
To self, go to competition into next break, says Stroppy Jody. 17 minutes to get your call into me, or 0344 499 1000. God, there's so many texts. Talk. What part of 14 years of utter failure, incompetence and betrayal does Jonathan Gullis not get? Deluded. Jez, funny how all these Tory ex-MPs are now spouting how they went wrong. Pity they didn't speak up when they were in power. He did, to be fair. Jez, if Kemi was a patriot, she would call a pressure conference, I think you meant a press conference, and announce the end of the Conservative Party, but she's not and she won't. They don't care about anything except their own sad lives. Paul's in Chislehurst. I consider myself to be a core Conservative voter, having always voted for them, apart from that last general election when I voted Reform. And I can say with great certainty that I will be voting for Reform at the next election. I'm fed up to the back teeth of being lied to and having to stomach a load of craziness from Labour and the Tories. It is, for me, Reform all the way. 0344 499 1000. Text to 87222. You can send a WhatsApp note as well. We, though, are going stateside, ladies and gentlemen, to a man who I sort of created on this station and then took the money and went on other shows from inside sources. The managing editor, Michael Graham, the American one. A very good afternoon, evening to you, sir.
Happy to be with you, absolutely.
Did they offer you more on other shows? I feel like our special relationship.
Well, actually, they're more. The hosts are more pleasant, so that's the reason why.
Well, did they not pick you up on that shirt, that green shirt? They are more pleasant. You're right, absolutely. My friend, just before
my motto: if you can't say something nice, please speak loudly. So that's how I roll. And I
want to talk about.
You're absolutely right. You were talking earlier about are you going to have problems with Trump and Starmer and trade and whatnot? And look, Donald Trump is not messing around. He wants America first. He wants people building stuff here in the U.S. and that means buying less stuff abroad. There are a lot of economists who think it's not bright. I personally am kind of dubious about the premise. But I will say this, I don't get the steel export thing on your side because the U.S. only imports about 200,000 tons of steel from the U.K. We import more from Vietnam, from Chile. I mean, like, we got 6.6 million tons just from Canada alone. So it's such a small drop in the bucket. I think the way for the U.K. and the U.S. to go together is more on the uniting on the cultural side as your reform message emerges with Trump's. What happened in the U.S. is that our version of the Reform Party took over our version of the Conservative Party, the Republican Party. So the Republican Party is the Reform Party in the United States, and because Trump took it all over. So with the economics, obviously, in the areas like banking and finance and stuff like that, there's a lot of room for cooperation. It's just not a trade-heavy part of the economy. You see what I'm saying? Like, I do need a lot of offices or whatever, computer terminals to be in the financial industry. But there are other areas.
You have to understand that. I mean, I was on air when he did his inauguration speech, and we've spoken many times. And I read this text out from an English listener, and he said basically this. Am I allowed to say English, British, whatever? I don't know. Illegal migrant. And he basically said, imagine having a leader who says, I'm going to make your lives better because taxes will be lower, the streets will be safer, your country will be prouder of you, and, here's another one, we'll stop the world from ripping you off. Who the hell wouldn't want that? We know, everybody in America, I'm sure, knows that Donald Trump comes with baggage, and there's much that he says and does that a lot of people disagree with. But let's not forget this. He managed to win the popular vote. He won the Senate, he won Congress, and he won the presidency because the American people, and I think the British people, sadly, are about 4 years behind. We've just started the Biden thing with that dreary Starmer. Are fed up of being taken for granted. They're fed up of mass migration. They're fed up of their public services being stretched. And they're basically saying, listen, you need to listen to us. And I think a lot of British people are looking across at Trump and going, and I said it earlier, wouldn't it be great if somebody stood in 10 Downing Street and said, you know what, the civil service, you're running this country, you're all fired. I'm not having this, I'm not having it. I think you should be very proud right now as Americans. Whether it works or not, I don't know. But he's doing what he was elected to do, MG.
And that's what the new CBS poll over the weekend showed. Not only is he above water, 53-47, which is good for a president because we're such a divided country, and particularly good for Republicans because there have been fewer Republicans in the past. But 70% of the respondents, Republicans, independents, everybody said Trump is doing what he said he would do. Now, you may not like what he's doing, but he's getting a lot of credit from the American people for that. The other thing he's done is he has somehow gotten the Democrats to come out and side with people who are wildly unpopular. They already had an illegal immigration problem. Because the fact is, even if you feel sorry for people who live in rotten places and you understand why they want to come, you also understand why everybody can't. You have to have rules. You know, there has to be a line, etc. So Democrats have spent 8 years defending illegal immigration. That's blown up for them. They spent 8 years defending allowing biological males to compete as females in sports. That's blown up for them. And now they're defending government workers. I don't know what it's like in the UK, but in the United States of America, government worker is the beginning of a punchline of a joke.
Yep.
If you can't get a real job, work for the government.
It's what we call the civil service here. It's exactly the same. One thing that I was going to say very quickly, I wish I had more time. We've heard in the last hour that Netanyahu said, you know, if the hostages, well, he says hostages aren't returned. Donald Trump said, and I quote, if all the hostages aren't by midday, all hell will break loose. I thought the low point was I'm going to turn Gaza into a sort of Trump Tower venue. I don't know what the Americans think of that. I only had one question. It's slightly hard. Do you think there'll be a Gaza strip club?
Well, if Trump is involved, absolutely. I mean, without a doubt, you know. So and he knows half the women who'll work it. But you know, Netanyahu seizing this opportunity to say, okay, you know, yell all you want. The kid gloves are coming off. Look at the condition these last hostages were in. If the remaining ones who are alive, and who knows if it's 70 or 7, if you're going to treat them like this, what's the difference? You know, you're basically killing them anyway. And it's going to be a difficult moment for everybody, and particularly for the people of Israel. Of course, there are a couple of Americans there, too. It's terrible. But the thing that Trump has done is he has moved the view of this problem from what can we make Israel do? How can we bully Israel into fixing it into, you know, the problem is the people in Gaza. No matter what happens, next Tuesday, they'll be trying to kill the Jews again.
I agree.
And so while it's not realistic to, you know, have an alien ship teleport everybody from Gaza and take them to Albania, he has shined the light, and everyone is now, other than the radicals, are in agreement. The problem is what's happening in Gaza, and I think you're going to see more escalation. That's what you're going to see.
I love having you on. We should have put you on earlier. Michael Graham, we'll have you back next week. Thank you. By the way, do you want to win £25,000 tax-free? This is how.
It's competition time, and we're giving you a chance to win a whopping £25,000. So what do you need to do to get involved? All you have to do is text the word prize to 83338, or you can enter by post. It's as simple as that. Once again, to get involved, just text the word prize to 83338, or you can enter by post.
18 plus, UK excluding NI. Enter by SMS for £2 plus one standard network charge by 11 p.m. on March the 3rd, 2025. Or send your name, email and contact number to £25,000 cash competition, PO Box 3190, Colchester CO2 8GP, to arrive by 5 p.m. on March the 6th, 2025. This is a News Broadcasting Network promotion. Full terms and conditions at talksport.com.
It's a lot of money, £93,904 a year. That's before you start putting in your expenses for the pens, for the paper clips, you know, for the television, for the heating allowance at your second home. You know, these guys are living pretty bloody well, actually.
They could always turn around and say that we don't want to accept this, and we actually do want to feel more in tune with our constituents. It'd be interesting to see how many people actually do that.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
5 to 7. Ramsey says, don't believe for 1 minute that if there is a three-way split at the next election, there will be a Reform Tory pact. I think the old school will do anything, including a Conservative Labour Liberal group, to keep Reform out of government. Fiona. Jez, if a Brit got stuck abroad, they go to the local consulate or embassy. Why are foreigners asking the UK to fund them going home? George Baker says, in Blackpool, I'm a larger chap and I think I self-identify as a Chagos Island. I might get sent to Mauritius with £1 million a year for the Mauritians to look after me. Can you recommend a lefty lawyer? Hello to Mark in Sandown, the Isle of Wight. Jez, if the Tories join up with Reform, it will be a huge mistake for Reform to accept them. They are now a busted flush full of freebie waffling fools. Don't go anywhere near them again. Kelly says, I've just booked a return flight to Albania for a holiday for a cost of less than 100. Where the hell does 22 grand each come from? Steve Chandler, good evening. I reckon when Starmer sent over the 100 Labour members to campaign for Kamala to return the favour, the Democrats would help decide Labour policy. So many similarities. Jez said, I don't know. There are lots of people who have been trafficked to the UK, sold a pup and are stuck here, such as the guys working 70 hours a week for peanuts. Why not offer an amnesty to anyone who surrenders themselves, gives them a free flight and a few quid, and they will be gone? Interesting. Jez, Adam from Southend here, touching on something yesterday, Reform voters. My ex-daughter and all their family voted in the general election last year. They never took an interest before. And who did they vote for? Reform, because it is happening and it is not going anywhere. Stephen's in Bristol. Stephen Carter, good afternoon. Jez, on illegals. Why can't we have a volunteer home guard on the beaches, turning the boats back and decommissioned Navy ships to take them back? Breathing. Jez, you're being too tough on Kemi Badenoch. You just wait until she takes up a position as leader of the Conservative Party. She'll be good for... Wait, what? She started the job 4 months ago. What the hell are we talking about? You're absolutely right. Loads of you have texted. If I haven't got your text in, I do apologise. Oh, God, honestly. Jim's in Cambridge. How are you, Jim? I watched the Reform conference in Wiltshire and I must admit I started welling up a bit. All the speakers said what British people want to hear. I want my country back. Eric's in Gloucester. Hello, Eric. He says, what a joke this country is. We pay France billions of pounds to stop the boats, but they don't. So why do we pay them? France is a safe country, so turn the boats around and send them back. Don't let them in. Stop paying France. Get rid of the Blob. Reform all the way. Great show, but I much prefer Kev O'Sullivan, who comes on after you. And that's from Mrs. O'Sullivan. Hello, Kevin O'Sullivan. I made that up because I saw you come in.
I know you did. I know you did.
Have you heard this latest story? I've lost it somewhere. You know this 19,000 migrants. Have you seen the news?
What, but
you know the filmed bit by the Home Office?
£1 million flight.
22 grand each. Why not put them on a coach?
Yeah. Do you know why they did it as well? They obviously watched Trump.
Of course.
Putting all those pictures
Bar
up.
the shackles,
and
there was nothing
we'll have
else.
a bit of that, and then they screw it up. But they screw it up
and they disrespect the British people.
You're
looking very svelte this afternoon. What's going on?
Well, you know me, always in good shape. We're gonna kick off actually. Rod Little's coming on, just by way of doing something different. We're going to talk about the madness of the Drax Power Station. It is the biggest power station in Britain. It produces 5% of the nation's electricity, supplies 5 million homes with their power. So until 2 years ago, it was fuelled by coal from a coal mine 30 miles away in North Yorkshire.
What's it now? Wind from a cow?
No. They closed that. They can't have coal anymore.
No.
We now transport wood pellets 3,000 miles from North America all the way to Drax. Put them into the power station. Wood pellets spew out as much pollution as coal. So this entire ludicrous planet-destroying project is purely so Ed Miliband and the gang can say we're using renewables.
What, wood pellets?
Yeah, they're renewables.
This is also a government that spent, what was it, £100 million on a concrete